Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 651. The Power of Collapsed Jade. When the torrent of spirit source stopped, a huge hole was torn in the dome of the Gynecology palace that went straight to the ground. Makoto Senju looked up in the direction of Aizen Sosok. Puff. Makoto Senju showed no mercy in that knife. Therefore, even though Aizen Sosok's blood gushed out of his chest with one hand and used Kido, it continued to flow out. In this brief fight, Makoto Senju also really explored Aizen Sosok's bottom for the first time. Very strong. And Aizen Sosok is undoubtedly an invulnerable hexagonal warrior. There is no weakness in this man. Kendo, Heikatachi, Shunpo, Kitten, Matsu, spiritual body. In terms of the boundaries of the god of death, Aizen Sosok is undoubtedly at the top of the god of death. Even if Aizen Sosok and Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni were to fight one-on-one, Senju Makoto believed that after a long and protracted battle, Aizen Sosok would be the winner. Perhaps, in terms of pure Kendo, Aizen Sosok is not as good as Unohana Retsu, and his destructive power is far inferior to Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, and his speed is also slightly inferior to Shifen Yuan or Ishii. However, Aizen Sosok's perfection without any shortcomings will definitely allow him to achieve the final victory. Unless, like Senju Makoto, with a power that has surpassed the limits of the god of death, he forcibly breaks Aizen Sosok's fighting rhythm and seriously injures Aizen Sosok with one blow. Aizen-kun, the victory and defeat have been decided. Now you are no longer my opponent. After a pause, Senju Makoto glanced at the Hojoku that seemed to be moving more and more violently on Aizen Sosok's chest, and spoke. Even the Hojoku is preparing to abandon you, right? Aizen Sosok followed Senju Makoto's gaze and looked at the Hojoku. The Hojoku's abnormal movements were constantly intensifying, and the flesh and blood that bound the Hojoku had even been torn off. However, even so, Aizen Sosok's face was still not a bit panicked, and he turned to speak. Makoto-kun, how much do you know about the Hojoku? What? The Hojoku? This is an extremely strange substance, and it actually has self-awareness, which allows the heart of the things around it to be absorbed and materialized. Aizen Sosok slowly loosened his hand covering the wound, and instead talked calmly and eloquently. In other words, the simple understanding is that the Hojoku has the power to fulfill wishes. The clearer the wishes, the more likely it is to be fulfilled, and the more obvious the power that the Hojoku can exert. And now, the Hojoku is initially lodging in my body, which is called the first stage. After a pause, Aizen Sosok asked Senju Makoto. Then does Makoto know when I completed the first stage? Senju Makoto asked cooperatively. When? When I initially confirmed that Makoto's incarnation Kurosaki Makoto is alive, the strong emotional fluctuations, the first time in decades that the heart that could not be suppressed, made the completed Hojoku initially recognize me. Aizen Sosok's tone gradually became excited, and he suddenly shouted at the Hojoku in his chest. Hojoku, you can hear it, right? My strong evolution chasing heart. If strength is measured by heart, I will never lose to anyone. My wish is right in front of me. The wish I have been chasing for countless years is right in front of me, attached to my heart, Hojoku. In an instant, in the astonished eyes of Senju Makoto, the abnormal movement of Hojoku suddenly stopped, and instead began to sink into Aizen Sosok's chest. The dim light seemed to be responding to something. The next moment, Aizen Sosok's spiritual pressure suddenly surged again, and the truly materialized spiritual pressure began to appear, and turned into a milky white surface that completely covered Aizen Sosok's body. This scene made Senju Makoto's expression slightly change. When the milky white surface that covered Aizen Sosok's whole body, which was somewhat similar to a pupa, cracked on Aizen Sosok's head, revealing Aizen Sosok's handsome face. All the beings under the dome of the Gynecology palace, whether they were Seireitei or Shinigami, suddenly could not sense Aizen Sosok's spiritual pressure at all. Even Unohana Retsu and Stark, who had the most spiritual pressure, were no exception. This does not mean that Aizen Sosok's spiritual pressure disappeared, but that there was a gap in level between Aizen Sosok and all the beings under the dome. Just like ordinary humans without any spiritual power cannot see the appearance of hollows and Shinigami. The gap between the non-existence of spiritual power and the existence of spiritual power is an unbridgeable gulf, so even looking directly at each other is impossible. Now, after the gap in level between the two sides has reached a certain extent, all the beings under the dome cannot sense Aizen Sosok's spiritual pressure. Only Senju Makoto. In Senju Cheng's eyes, the hugeness of Asian Sasuke's spiritual pressure has far exceeded the limit of the captain-level Shinigami. So, I have become the whetstone for your evolution, Asian Sasuke, to promote the integration of the Hojoku with yourself. Senju Cheng asked calmly. Whetstone? Asian Sasuke felt his new attitude, and a gentle smile appeared on his cold face as if ice and snow had melted, and he answered. No, for me, Cheng is not a so-called whetstone, but an extremely important companion. Companion? Senju Cheng was a little puzzled by this statement. Yes, companion. Asian Sasuke smiled and answered. On the road that surpasses everyone, Cheng has taken a few more steps forward than me, so the best way to catch up with Cheng is to step on the footprints left by Cheng and go to the deeper end. After a pause, Asian Sasuke said meaningfully. And, didn't Cheng once leap forward in this way? After saying this, Senju Cheng couldn't help but fall into a moment of contemplation. In the past, it was precisely because of Asian Sasuke's intentional or unintentional threat and sense of danger that made Senju dare not stop for a moment on the road to becoming stronger. Because Senju had a very clear understanding of the horror of Asian Sasuke. Those decades were also that time period when Senju's strength increased the most terrifyingly. On the contrary, after achieving Bankai, although there was still a great enemy like Hyoshu the Uchiha, the increase in strength was not fast or slow. In the final analysis, Senju was a little slack and confused. Unlike in the past, there was no coordinate of Asian Sasuke clearly waiting for Senju in front. Chapter 652. The continuing melee. After achieving the Bankai All Things commandment and even mastering the power of Name Spirit Sun, Senju has clearly understood that his true realm has completely surpassed Asian Sasuke and Unohana. This has made Senju fall into unconscious confusion, because Senju has no idea what it will be like to go further, and what kind of path he should take to surpass Hyoshu the Uchiha. In a sense, if Senju is willing to give up all his concerns and carefully deal with the seal traps that Hyoshu the Uchiha may set up, then Hyoshu the Uchiha will not be able to do anything to Senju. Name Spirit Sun makes Senju the true incarnation of Spirit Sun. Just as long as black exists in the world, Hyoshu the Uchiha is immortal. As long as Spirit Suns exist in the world, Senju will also not be able to die completely. However, as the two basic substances that make up the world, Spirit Suns and Instrument Suns are simply impossible to completely non-existent. Therefore, the sense of urgency that Hyoshu the Uchiha brought to Senju was not even as strong as that of Asian Sasuke in the past. Asian Sasuke continued to relax his body, which was far beyond his previous body. Even the Hojoku had begun to completely merge with his body. He could not help but praise it. You are worthy of me. Only you can push me to evolve at such an amazing speed, and even directly jump from the first stage of fusion Hojoku to the third stage as expected. You're welcome. Senju sensed Asian Sasuke's spiritual pressure, combined with his own understanding of the Shinigami and the Hollow, and understood that Asian Sasuke had completely entered the so-called perfect stage of the Shinigami. Only one more step forward, Asian Sasuke can truly cross the dimension of the Shinigami and move to a higher realm. In other words, Asian Sasuke's current state is also at a fork in the road. If he takes the next step forward, the evolution driven by his inner choice will lead Asian Sasuke to a different and higher dimension. Then, please seriously comment on my current posture and strength, how about that? Asian Sasuke said. Maybe, I will die. Senju replied. To die under Makoto's sword is also an idea I have longed for hundreds of years. The next moment, Asian Sasuke appeared beside Senju Makoto as if teleporting, and the mirror flower and water moon in his hand swept out and collided with the whole world. Bang! A huge air wave instantly exploded in a supergiant ring above the dome of the Kurei Palace, and even the gravel 100 miles away from the Kurei Palace was shaking. Countless large hollows living around the Kurei Palace were in fear, although these large hollows could not sense Asian Sasuke's spiritual pressure at all. The invisible terror and the amazing aftermath of the battle made countless large hollows tremble. And right below the battle between Asian Sasuke and Senju Makoto, the melee was still continuing. Boom! Countless giant trees are growing wildly in the desert, or in other words, the entire desert in the Cheng-ge Palace has been completely transformed into a forest. Yuck! Trashil, as if something was set in his mind, stared at Unohana with bloodthirsty and chaotic eyes, and endless giant trees attacked Unohana frantically. The sword light was chaotic, cutting everything. Unohana, who drew her sword, was like a Valkyrie dancing in the forest, and all the attacks were cut off wherever she passed. For Unohana Retsu, this kind of attack could not pose a real threat to Unohana Retsu at all, and could only delay Unohana Retsu to a certain extent. However, Aiden Sosok thought it was the best solution to deal with him, which undoubtedly made Unohana Retsu subconsciously alert to possible changes. In addition to Yggdrasil, Yulu's Healu, under the command of Aiden Sosok, also fully demonstrated its terrifying ability. Under the premise that there is no ability to restrain Yulu's Heli, and Yulu's Heli has merged a large number of spirit particles in advance, the power that can be exerted is beyond imagination. Otherwise, the former Araki would not have been imprisoned in the infernal hell by the Jingling Court, which is enough to show the strength of Yulu's Heli. The fighting style similar to Senju Cheng allows Yulu's Heli to control countless spirit particles to attack Soifeng. The ubiquitous attack is undoubtedly a perfect restraint on Soifeng's speed. Conquer him, Queen of the Mermaid. Faced with Soifeng's predicament, although he did not understand why Lord Ashura would choose to stand on the same side as the God of Death, he still chose to return to the blade without hesitation, and then personally helped Soifeng out. Scorching Sea Current. Suddenly, the extremely hot sea current gushed out from the sharp gilt-patterned giant sword in Haribal's hand, and swept through the dense attacks that surrounded Soifeng. What? Haribal's help made Soifeng a little confused, and she couldn't help but look at Haribal in surprise. Don't be distracted. Haribal's eyes were locked on the direction of Yulu's Heli, and after reminding Soifeng, he quickly closed the distance with Yulu's Heli with sound turn. As a vast old-level Aransei, he was not good at protecting the God of Death, but as long as the enemy was completely eliminated, it would undoubtedly indirectly protect the God of Death. Facing Haribal's approach, Yulu's Heli smiled and said, "It's useless." The next moment, just as the giant sword in Haribal's hand slashed at Yulu's Heli's position, Yulu's Heli's figure disappeared instantly as if it had disintegrated. Then, Yulu's Heli's voice rang out from all directions at the same time, saying, "I have already merged spirit particles that are more than 1,000 miles away from the Curacao Palace. In a sense, these countless spirit particles are all part of my body, so attacking me is meaningless." As soon as these words came out, Haribal and Soifeng's faces darkened. Destroying spirit particles that are more than 1,000 miles away. This is undoubtedly not something that Haribal and Soifeng can do. However, Yulu's Heli did not give Soifeng and Haribal more time to think. When countless spirit particles gathered, they attacked Soifeng and Haribal again under the control of Yulu's Heli. Boom boom boom. For a while, Soifeng and Haribal could only hastily deal with the endless attacks while thinking hard about how to solve the problem. At this moment, the dark space maintained by the Senbon Bancho Jinyan was shattered, revealing the figures of Ulkira and Byakuya Kachaka. Chapter 653. Solo defense against Ichimura Jin. However, compared to Ulkira, who had grown a pair of huge black wings after a period of return to the blade, Byakuya Kachika's condition was undoubtedly much more miserable and embarrassed. His body was covered in blood, his hair was messy, and there was a bloody hole in his abdomen. He stood shakily in front of Ulkira. "Death God, it seems that the White Emperor sword that you said you had placed all your heart on is just like this." Ulkira, who was holding the Raging sword in his hand, was still reflecting the last fatal blow that Byakuya Kachika had just made, the White Emperor sword. That dazzling light and the blow that was infused with Byakuya Kachika's full spiritual pressure, Ulkira looked down at the tiny and rapidly regenerating blood hole on his body. That blow, Byakuya Kachika's White Emperor sword defeated the Raging sword in Ulkira's hand, but the remaining power could not even penetrate Ulkira's body. The gap in spiritual pressure cannot be made up by the so-called heart. Ulkira calmly walked to Byakuya Kachika step by step, looking down at Byakuya Kachika who was slightly bent and could not stand straight. "However, you should be proud of your spiritual pressure to delay for such a long time. Death God, tell me your name. You were a person worth remembering in your long life." "Kochi, Kachika Byakuya." Kachika Byakuya panted heavily, but his eyes unconsciously scanned the situation around him. When he saw Nell being held in Soifeng's arms, his expression could not help but slightly relieved. "Kachika Byakuya? It seems that you are not afraid of death, but feel happy about something," Ulkira said with some doubt. "This is something that you Aaron says without heart cannot understand." Kachika Byakuya stood up with difficulty and looked at Ulkira. There was no fear or cowardice of death in his eyes, but he continued to speak as a matter of course. "There is something more important than life, and that is the heart." Ulkira was stunned when he heard this, and then he looked in the direction that Byakuya Kachika had just been looking at Nell who was protected by Soifeng. After thinking for a few breaths, Ulkira suddenly spoke. Although I can't understand it, I'm curious about how you would react if your heart was taken away. What? The moment Byakuya-Kuchika's expression changed, Ulquiorra's figure almost instantly disappeared from the spot, and rushed straight towards Soyifeng, aiming at Nell and Soyifeng's arms. Ulquiorra's speed was so fast that even Soyifeng, who was desperately avoiding the attack of Yulu's Heli, didn't react. Just when Ulquiorra was about to touch Nell, Blue Sword Cannon. A golden torrent of spiritual power rushed in front of Ulquiorra, blocking Ulquiorra's way. Ulquiorra, who was stagnant, turned his head and looked at Haribal and asked, "Haribal, what are you doing?" Haribal declared war on Ulquiorra without hesitation. "Ulquiorra, your opponent is me. Have you betrayed Master Aizen, Haribal?" Ulquiorra asked calmly. This is not betrayal, but a response made in accordance with loyalty. Haribal replied. In response to Haribal, Ulquiorra's Radiant Sword was thrown over by Ulquiorra. Boom. Haribal dodged the attack on the side of his body, and chose to approach Ulquiorra without hesitation to fight. For a moment, the third and fourth Espadas fought head-on, and the two Arances of the vast old level launched a rare collision. However, without Haribal's assistance, Soyifeng fell into a dilemma again in the face of the ubiquitous attacks of Yulu's Heli. While Haribal was fighting Ulquiorra, he was also calmly observing the direction of the entire battle, and he immediately discovered the situation of Byakuya-Kuchika and Soyifeng. However, Byakuya-Kuchika was already receiving emergency treatment from Nanowiz, but Soyifeng was in a very troublesome situation. Apache, Sun, Myra, support that god of death. Immediately, Haribal hurriedly ordered his three subordinates. The ability of Yulu's Heli was quite troublesome. Even after Haribal tried many times, he was helpless against Yulu's Heli, and could only delay time as much as possible. Although the combat power of Apache, Sun and Myra themselves was not outstanding among the subordinates, they had a special ability that was comparable to the 10 Espada. The god of mixed beasts young Apache, Sun, and Myra tore off their left arms at the same time, and then the three arms merged with each other to form a giant monster with the appearance characteristics of all three of them. This was also when Apache, Sun, and Myra were all Aranced by the Hojoku at the same time. Because they all had a strong desire to be loyal to Haribal and hoped to offer enough power, special abilities were born. Suddenly, the powerful spiritual pressure of Yong, which was only slightly inferior to the level of Vast Old, burst out, and then under the instructions of Apache, Sun, and Myra, he rushed straight to the direction of Soyifeng, relying on his amazing spiritual body to block all kinds of attacks for Soyifeng. And the melee under the dome, in fact, while Makoto Senju and Sosafrazen were fighting fiercely, they also divided some of their energy to pay attention to it. After Haribal's betrayal, the battle situation really entered a stalemate as expected, which undoubtedly made Makoto Senju slightly relieved. The next moment, as Mirror Flower Water Moon and all things collided and stalemated again, Senju Makoto's left hand suddenly clenched. Suddenly, a giant spirit sword of 100 meters formed behind Aizen Sasuke, and it slashed down behind Aizen Sasuke. However, just as the sword was about to hit Aizen Sasuke, a million layers of spiritual pressure fluctuations suddenly erupted behind Aizen Sasuke, like layers of materialized barriers blocking the giant spirit sword. Boom. When the layers of barriers were shattered, Aizen Sasuke had already withdrawn again, and even had the leisure to lower his head to pay attention to the battle situation under the dome, and spoke. "Oh, this is really interesting. I didn't expect that Vice Captain Matsumoto Rangiku could defend Ichimura Jin alone. Could it be that Vice Captain Matsumoto Rangiku received some special training from Makoto in private? He has made such great progress." These words with a hint of meaning made Senju Makoto, who originally wanted to continue chasing Aizen Sasuke, pause. Chapter 654 Different Paths or Training. Isn't this a naked slander? Senju Makoto didn't know where to start to refute Aizen Sasuke's pointed ridicule. After all, even a blind man could see the problem with Ichimura Jin being defended by Matsumoto Rangiku alone. You know, Ichimura Jin was once an absolute genius. He graduated from the Mao Academy of Spiritual Arts at a record speed, which caused a sensation in the entire Seireitei. It was just that Ichimura Jin successfully attracted Aizen Sasuke's attention in this way, and then lurked around Aizen Sasuke in a following manner. Only then did Ichimura Jin gradually keep a low profile in the Seireitei. But even so, Ichimura Jin's combat power is at the upper middle level even among all the captains. especially Ichimura Jin's fighting style, which is more suitable for assassination and attack than Seireitei and Yorishi Shiuin, which also allows Ichimura Jin to almost instantly kill all opponents weaker than him, and those stronger than Ichimura Jin may also be successfully attacked by sneak attacks. However, in Senju Makoto's eyes, the battle scene between Ichimura Jin and Matsumoto Rain-Jaiku was reflected. Intense. Very intense. Matsumoto Rain-Jaiku can be said to have tried her best to launch wave after wave of attacks on Ichimura Jin, and Ichimura Jin's expression was faintly dazzled even if he squinted his eyes. Of course, this refers to the blade that turned into countless dust after Matsumoto Rain-Jaiku's zanpakutō Great Cat Shy Eye, which dazzled Ichimura Jin. Moreover, Ichimura Jin seemed to be trying his best to attack Matsumoto Rain-Jaiku again and again, but the blade of the zanpakutō's divine spear, which was constantly extending and contracting, seemed to be disturbed by dust, and it always brushed past Matsumoto Rain-Jaiku without hurting her at all. This made Senju Makoto a little bit unbearable. The penetration of the divine spear was so strong that it could penetrate several buildings in an instant, and the extension trajectory would not be deviated at all, but now it was disturbed by dust and repeatedly lost its accuracy. It can be said that the highlight was a brush, and the whole was a perfect outline. Maybe it's because of the difference in length, and the abilities restrain each other. Senju Makoto responded without a trace of ripples. I see. Seeing this, Aiden Sosok also showed a look of understanding on his face, and then murmured, I thought Jin had been lurking beside me all the time. Maybe he had other thoughts in mind, so he was deliberately dragged by Matsumoto Rain-Jaiku. It seems that I misunderstood. Senju Makoto. Aiden Sosok knows everything, but he pretends not to know. What does this mean? My opinion is for reference only. Senju Makoto said lightly. No, Makoto's opinion is very important. Aiden Sosok continued to answer. If it was in the past, even if Senju Makoto heard Aiden Sosok's answer, Senju Makoto would only think that Aiden Sosok was just teasing him. Now, Senju Makoto doesn't know if it's an illusion. When he treats it with a different heightened mentality, Senju Makoto actually feels that Aiden Sosok is serious. He seems to really listen to his answer seriously, so as to make important references for certain decisions. It feels as if he is trying to cooperate with Senju Makoto's performance and turn a blind eye. Senju Makoto. And Senju Makoto, who suddenly had this feeling in his heart, just felt that something seemed to be wrong. Could it be, I was hit by a mirror flower and walked a moon? Makoto Senju couldn't help but seriously consider this possibility, which made the fierce battle between the two sides enter a brief truce period. With this moment of relaxation, many of Aiden Sosok's injuries were quickly repaired by the Hangyoku at a speed that was almost super speed regeneration. Although Aiden Sosok has now truly reached the limit of the God of Death, and is only one step away from crossing into a new dimension, he is undoubtedly at an absolute disadvantage when facing Makoto Senju. When countless spirit particles are used by Makoto Senju, both spirit particles and spiritual pressure have undoubtedly lost their meaning to Makoto Senju. These characteristics based on the density, structure, strength, etc. of spirit particles are all controlled by Makoto Senju at will. Therefore, even if Makoto Senju has not truly released his Bankai and fully used the power of name, it is still not something that can be resisted by conventional forces. This made Aiden Sosok's eyes more and more scorching during the battle with Senju Makoto, and he also saw the dimensional scenery beyond the God of Death more clearly. In the past, Aiden Sosok's idea of evolution was to combine the structure and characteristics of the God of Death and the Hollow, so as to evolve into a perfect existence with all the advantages of both the God of Death and the Hollow. The God of Death has a limit, and this limit comes from the limit of the spirit itself. Therefore, as long as a more perfect spirit is evolved, all the limits will be raised again to a point that ordinary God of Death can hardly look up to. Spiritual pressure, spiritual power, fist and ghost, etc. will have a new upper limit based on the new body that is evolved. However, what Senju Makoto showed at this moment is undoubtedly a different dimensional scenery. Countless spirits are randomly changed and combined in the hands of Senju Makoto, and spiritual power and spiritual pressure are just products that Senju Makoto can manipulate at will. Makoto-kun, it seems that you have reached another extreme based on your own zanpakutō mobility, an extreme that is completely unimaginable. Aiden Sosok looked at Senju Makoto in front of him, and some ideas that had been overturned surged in his mind. Is it really correct to insist on the direction of hollowification of dead gods and hollowization of dead gods, and then combine the two to achieve self-evolution through the Hogyoku? Makoto-kun, it seems that he has taken another path, which should be the path of name that is scattered in that great spiritual book corridor. If I want to go in the same direction as Makoto-kun, mirror flowers and water moons, the extreme of Hojoku. For a moment, Aiden Sosok's materialized spiritual pressure cover in his whole body faintly fluctuated. The Hojoku, which had begun to completely merge with Aizen Sosok, showed signs of instability again due to the hesitation in Aizen Sosok's inner thoughts. The subtle changes in Aizen Sosok's body were also seen by Senju Makoto. Hojoku, unstable again. You know, during the moment of fighting with Aizen Sosok, Senju Makoto also realized how troublesome Aizen Sosok's current state was. The absolute limit of the god of death. This made Senju Makoto always need to be careful to deal with this troublesome power without using the power of name. More importantly, when Aizen Sosok was initially fused with the Hojoku, Aizen Sosok seemed to have the characteristics of immortality. Chapter 655 Only good news. As long as the Hojoku is indestructible, Aizen Sosok's body can be continuously rebuilt. Unless there is a problem with Aizen Sosok's full heart, or the Hojoku that has not yet been fully integrated has separated from Aizen Sosok, the only way to deal with Aizen Sosok is to seal him. Therefore, at this point, Senju Makoto had to weigh the possibility of forcibly suppressing the extremely arrogant Aizen Sosok with force. The instability of the Hojoku has become a major flaw exposed by Aizen Sosok. Aizen-kun, it seems that the Hojoku is not completely obedient to your ideas. Senju Makoto said tentatively. It's just a change of mind. The fluctuations of the spiritual pressure covering the surface of Aizen Sosok quickly disappeared, and he responded as if he didn't care. Senju Makoto's eyes moved slightly, looking at the white figure in front of him under the eternal night of Huko Mundo, and inexplicably felt a sense of loneliness on Aizen Sosok's body. A much stronger sense of loneliness than all the hollows that Senju Makoto had ever met. What do you think? Senju Makoto asked, which was rare, as if he was responding to Aizen Sosok's belief that his opinion was important. When Aizen Sosok heard this, a hint of surprise flashed across his calm eyes, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously raised a little, understanding. Finally, has Makoto also begun to try to understand each other? At this moment, Aizen Sosok, who was extremely good at controlling micro-expressions, understood that he should not show that kind of joyful expression, but should be calm, and indifferent. After all, only equality can be the basis for maintaining mutual understanding. Just as longing is the emotion farthest from understanding, mutual understanding cannot be achieved if it is too weak and humble. However, Aizen Sosok suddenly felt that the corners of his mouth that were raised this time were so reluctant to suppress them, even more difficult than humans suppressing Arkansas in the present world. Therefore, when Senju Makoto clearly discerned the emotion called joy on Aizen Sosok's face, he could not help but be slightly stunned, and then became alert. Aizen Sosok, why is he happy? What secret goal has been achieved? Or is there a hidden plan? Aizen Sosok tried several times in a row, barely suppressed the corners of his mouth, made his expression look gentle and calm, and then spoke. Mr. Makoto, what do you think is the basis of understanding? This abrupt question undoubtedly caught Senju Makoto off guard. Countless hollows were trembling within 100 miles, and the melee in the Kainyaku Palace under their feet continued. The 13th Division of the Gotti had also set up the stage for the battle in Karakura town. We, the two behind-the-scenes masters who secretly pushed this war, allegedly discussing philosophy above the dome and under the night sky. However, understanding, Senju Makoto's heart was undoubtedly touched by this question. Just like, no one can know the innocence of Senju Makoto, after a long time, Senju Makoto answered casually. There is no absolute understanding in the world. Even individuals are different, so how can there be completely consistent ideas and mutual understanding? Although this answer is different from what Aizen Sosok originally thought, the meaning is quite similar. Indeed. How can individuals understand each other when they are at different heights, at different levels of evolution, and witnessing different scenery? There will never be emotions and thoughts that can be blended between ants and dragons. For dragons, the value of ants is only about crawling and yearning. But, is Makoto denying something? Think that even if it is me, but, just when Aizen Sosok's face changed, Senju Makoto continued to speak. Perhaps absolute understanding does not exist, but the more similar individuals are, the closer their positions are, the more they can understand each other. As Senju Makoto finished speaking, his eyes turned and fell on Aizen Sosok again, but he found that Aizen Sosok seemed a little distracted. However, as if he felt Senju Makoto's gaze, Aizen Sosok reacted almost instantly and said with a smile. Thank you for your guidance, Makoto-kun. I already have the corresponding answer in my heart. After a pause, Aiden Sosok said with more admiration in his tone. As expected of Makao-kun, you have spoken the essence of understanding. The closer we are, the more we can understand each other. At this moment, as Aiden Sosok's voice fell, the outer layer of his materialized spiritual pressure changed again, entered the next stage. It was just different from the fourth stage of the original trajectory in Senju Makao-tao's memory, which gave Aiden Sosok a slit similar to an eye on his forehead, his eyebrows disappeared, 3 pairs of huge butterfly wings grew on his back, and a hole with a broken jade in the center appeared on his chest. In the original trajectory, Aiden Sosok had undoubtedly begun to shift towards hollow, and in this way he truly surpassed the dimensional limit of the god of death. However, Aiden Sosok in front of him began to show all kinds of special blue lines on the outer layer of the materialized spiritual pressure on his body, making this outer layer that looked a bit like a pupa look more like a specific code or aori that Aiden Sosok spread on his body. In addition, the broken jade was actually transferred from Aiden Sosok's body and then integrated into the mirror flower and water moon. The next moment, Senju Makao-tao clearly felt that Aiden Sosok's spiritual pressure, spiritual power, spiritual body, etc. had undergone a stronger transformation. And even if Senju Makao-tao inexplicably had a sense of illusion about Aiden Sosok, as if the Aiden Sosok he saw was just a reflection of the flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. However, as Senju Makao-tao distinguished Aiden Sosok with the perspective of the spirit, that feeling disappeared in just a moment. Is this the next stage? Aiden Sosok also looked down at his own changes, then looked at Senju Makao-tao and said, Makao-kun, how do you feel about this posture? Senju Makao-tao looked at Aiden Sosok's state seriously, and suddenly laughed and said, one good news, one bad news. I'm all ears. Aiden Sosok replied. Aiden-kun, you should also know about name, right? Senju Makao-tao asked. Aiden Sosok recalled and answered. Not much, but not a small amount either. If Makao-kun wants to know, I can tell you. Then the good news is that Aiden-kun is probably at a stage where he can start trying to control part of his name at any time. The bad news is the same. Senju Makao-tao said. It seems that Makao-kun has indeed controlled part of his name. Aiden Sosok said. At this point, Senju Makao-tao no longer made meaningless excuses and answered simply. That's right. Then there is only good news. Aiden Sosok added. Chapter 656. No opponent ahead. Senju Makao-tao was slightly startled when he heard this, and asked. Only good news? Why? Because in this way, Makao-tao and I will be on the same side, right? As Aiden Sosok spoke, he recalled the information he knew about name. Although the traces of name were almost extinct in the Jingling Court, with Aiden Sosok's means, he still detected some traces in the Great Spirit Book Corridor and the secret records of the Four Nobles. Of course, Aiden Sosok did not take the threat of name too seriously in the past. After all, in Aiden Sosok's view, as long as he can completely complete the fusion evolution of the collapsed jade, he will transcend the dimension of the god of death and will no longer be controlled by the name. As for the existing person who is suspected of mastering the power of name, Aiden Sosok also easily judged that the person is the extremely mysterious real Nemu monk. Therefore, after understanding the specific composition of the Zero Squad members, Aiden Sosok insisted on completing the final evolution of the Horyoku fusion, and finally went to the Soul King Palace to face the Zero Squad. Now, after confirming that Senju Makao-tao is also alive and has mastered part of the power of name, Aiden Sosok easily understands what Senju Makao-tao is afraid of and what he is worried about behind the scenes. To be more precise, Aiden Sosok knows more clearly who Makao-tao's real enemy is. That existence, is it the guardian of the name? Or the usurper? Aiden Sosok asked with interest. The latter. Senju Makao-tao couldn't help but look at Aiden Sosok with some admiration and simply responded. How many secrets related to the name that Aiden Sosok knows, Senju Makao-tao does not know. Maybe it is not clear who that existence is, but Senju Makao-tao knows that Aiden Sosok is referring to Hayashu the Wichibane. But Aiden Sosok seemed to have judged the situation he was facing from just a few words, which was enough to prove Aiden Sosok's high IQ. When our positions are not opposite, it is really comfortable and worry-free to communicate with such an existence, Senju Makao-tao said secretly, and then spoke directly. Perhaps it was tens of millions of years of stability and peace that made that existence ignore the surveillance of the name, so that I secretly invaded and discovered it. But now that existence will undoubtedly resume its strict defense of the name, so in a sense, if Aiden wants to further truly control the name, what he needs is to break through the defense of that existence first. I see. Agent Sosok's expression did not look solemn, but the corners of his mouth seemed to be a little bit suppressed, and he said, "So, it seems that my best choice is to unite with Makoto-kun, and let Makoto-kun distract the attention of Hyoshuga Wichibaya, so that I can seize the opportunity to seize the control of my part of the name. There is no way who made Aizen-kun seem to embark on an evolutionary path that is completely different from the original idea." At this point, Senju Makoto didn't understand that Aizen Sosok was very likely disturbed by himself during the evolution process, thus changing the evolutionary direction of the original trajectory, and instead embarked on the direction of controlling the name. Of course, evolution is not right or wrong. Although through the information of Shifen Yuan or Rishi, Senju Makoto understood that controlling the name is embarking on the road to becoming a god, so it seems that Aizen Sosok is now embarking on the right evolutionary direction. However, in the original trajectory, Aizen Sosok seems to have become an existence independent of the Shinigami and the Hollows, which is also a new possibility. However, one thing that can be confirmed is that Aizen Sosok's current evolutionary choice is correct for him. Only in this way can Senju Makoto ensure that Aizen Sosok stands in the same position as himself, and even stands in the same position as himself more firmly than Unohana Retsu, so that Aizen Sosok will not be regarded as an unstable factor that must be eliminated. Because, only Aizen Sosok is truly an existence that must be eliminated by Hyoshuga Wichibaya, just like Senju Makoto. Therefore, whether it is for survival or for the final evolution, Aizen Sosok will be tied to Senju Makoto in a sense. But Senju Makoto's answer gave Aizen Sosok a feeling of being understood. As expected of Makoto, even the evolutionary direction that has not really been set foot on has been clearly interpreted by Makoto. For Aizen Sosok, compared with the unknown road that he originally insisted on, the road with Makoto, a close friend, is undoubtedly more attractive. It's really boring to look down on everything alone and without anyone understanding. The new road is more interesting. Aizen Sosok also answered his best friend in front of him. It's just a pity that fun and risk coexist. Senju Makoto said. Does Makoto really care about that kind of thing? Aizen Sosok looked at Senju Makoto and spoke his inner thoughts frankly. Only yes, there is no opponent ahead. If it is said that when Aizen Sosok said this to the 10 Espartas, the as he referred to as himself and the Hojoku. Then at this moment, the as Aizen Sosok referred to as you and himself. Not to mention that the one standing in front of Makoto and himself is just Hyoshuga Wichibaya, who has been hiding in the Soul King Palace for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. Even in front of the Soul King, Aizen Sosok would not be shaken by this idea. And Senju Makoto also smiled at this moment, although he was wondering whether Aizen Sosok changed the direction of evolution due to his judgment of the situation, and knew that only in this way could he truly gain his trust and solve the risk of being killed. Or Aizen Sosok simply shook the original direction of evolution and instinctively chose the stronger direction of evolution he showed. Or Aizen Sosok really regarded himself as a rare person who could understand each other. These are no longer the point. At least, when the positions are consistent and the paths of both sides are extremely close, the two sides are natural allies in the true sense. And when he tried to face Aizen Sosok on an equal footing, Senju Makoto found that Aizen Sosok did not seem as difficult to understand as he imagined. This man longs for endless perfection, and seems to long for companions who can understand each other. Well, Aizen-kun, how about we discuss some details? Senju Makoto showed a sincere and gentle smile to Aizen Sosok for the first time and said. Seeing this, Aizen Sosok unconsciously sheathed the Kagami Suijutsu in his hand and said casually. Makoto-kun, please tell me what you want. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 657. The arrogance of being defeated by only one person. Senju Makoto had no doubt about Aizen Sosok's generosity. The so-called status, fame, power, these external things, Aizen Sosok obviously did not really care about. Otherwise, with Aizen Sosok's ability and skills, it would not be difficult for him to become the next Captain General, or even join the Eleventh Division, instead of going to great lengths to rebel against the Seireitei and seek the path of evolution. Soul Society, it belongs to me. What about Huko Mundo? Aizen Sosok asked. I'm not very interested in Huko Mundo. Senju Makoto expressed his attitude. In fact, if there were not a lot of ties in Soul Society, even Senju Makoto in Soul Society would not have to seize control. Okay, Aizen Sosok answered as if he was discussing the distribution of dinner. Since Makao is interested in Soul Society, I will help Makao control Soul Society. It seems that Aizen-kun has understood my plan. Aizen Sasuke smiled and replied. Makao, rest assured, I will help you clean up everything you want to clean up. Suddenly, Senju Makao couldn't help but sigh again at the ease of communicating with such a smart person like Aizen Sasuke. Senju Makao even felt that Aizen Sasuke was just like the worm in his stomach. Then, I hope that we will never have an opponent in the future. Senju Makao said, and then stretched out his palm towards Aizen Sasuke. At this moment, in Aizen Sasuke's eyes, it seemed as if time had been briefly paused. A close friend who has waited for 100 years, a companion who has been looking for a long life, and a person who can understand each other in the endless time in the future, under the lonely night sky of Yuko Mundo, the palm that Senju Makao stretched out completely became the only one in Aizen Sasuke's eyes, and then he slowly reached out and held it. That kind of strange and expectant feeling. For a moment, in Senju Makao's slightly surprised eyes, Aizen Sasuke's expression actually had a little more innocence and satisfaction, just like a child who found the best playmate, and his answer was also serious and simple. Please give me more advice in the future, Makao. The handshake lasted for a few breaths, until Senju Makao wanted to let go. He found that Aizen Sasuke was still holding it tightly. This made Senju Makao's smile gradually become a little more stiff, and then he coughed lightly. Cough. Aizen Sasuke, who reacted quickly let go of his hand with a look like spring breeze on his face. However, Senju Makao didn't know if it was an illusion, but he always felt that there seemed to be a flash of reluctance in Aizen Sasuke's eyes. Since Aizen-kun has understood my plan, then the Malay under the dome. When he said this, Senju Makao's tone paused slightly. The Malay under the dome seemed fierce, but it seemed to maintain a balance. Although there was also that factor that Senju Makao instructed Haribo to turn against us. If it was not that Aizen Sasuke was also deliberately making some arrangements, how could there be such a coincidence? So, Aizen Sasuke had anticipated the possibility of joining forces with me early. Or has he always had this idea? This Malay is also for Makao-kun to give the explanation to Seireitei later, and this Malay can also help Makao-kun identify and select the death gods who will always stick to the same position as Makao-kun. Aizen Sasuke's explanation undoubtedly coincided with Senju Makao's idea. After all, even if Makao-kun intends to control Soul Society, he cannot do so at his true identity before the threat of that existence is eliminated, so it is very likely that Makao-kun is using Unohana-retsu to control Soul Society, right? Aizen Sasuke continued. In response, Senju Makao also understood that there was no point in hiding anything, and nodded directly. I have a little objection to this. Aizen Sasuke raised a finger and said in a more serious tone. Is there a flaw in the plan? Senju Makao asked. Of course not. Senju Makao's plan is not complicated, but it is a naked conspiracy. Makao-kun has substitutes for various unstable factors, so there is no flaw that affects the overall situation of the plan. Aizen Sasuke shook his head and said. But, since Makao-kun wants Unohana-retsu to be the Captain General and control the Seireitei, then he must be planning for Unohana-retsu to defeat me who has forced the Gotti 13 into a dead end. That's right. I will not and cannot be defeated by Unohana-retsu. Aizen Sasuke said in a tone that did not allow for negotiation, which made Senju Makao's expression slightly dark. Just when he was about to say something, Aizen Sasuke's tone changed and he said bluntly. I will only be defeated by Makao-kun. This point requires Makao-kun to make some minor changes in the plan. Senju Makao. This damned Sasuke, oh no, this should be arrogance. Even if Aizen Sasuke is acting a retreat, he still looks down on everyone except me. However, Senju Makao can quite understand Aizen Sasuke's thoughts. Even if he is destined to be inferior to others, Senju Makao will only be willing to be under Unohana-retsu and be suppressed by other beings. He cannot accept it. Therefore, Senju Makao pondered for a few breaths, thinking about the various effects that the modification of the plan might have, then nodded and said. I understand, Aizen-kun, I can satisfy you on this point. Immediately, Aizen Sasuke's expression straightened, and then he spoke. In this case, I can't let Captain Yamamoto wait for the God of Death for too long, so, I'll have to inconvenience Makao-kun for the time being. Come on. Senju Makao, who also understood, nodded and responded. Maybe, it will be a little painful, please forgive me, Makao-kun. Almost as soon as Aizen Sasuke's voice fell, Jinwoo Suiyu drew out her sheath again and waved at Senju Makao. In an instant, the sword pressure wielded by Jinwoo Suiyu was like a storm disaster that destroyed everything. Not only did it completely submerge Senju Cheng in it, it also instantly annihilated most of the dome of the Gynecology Palace. Boom. A loud noise that shook the earth sounded above the Gynecology Palace, attracting the attention of all beings under the Gynecology Palace. All beings subconsciously looked up, only to see that the dome simulating the blue sky and white clouds above the Hutomundo had almost completely dissipated, and the eternal night of Hutomundo once again appeared in everyone's eyes. In addition, there was a figure fallen from the dome, covered in blood, with weak spiritual pressure. That is Kuro, Mr. Kurosaki Makoto. Soiloi Fong's pupil shrank. Makoto. Yunohana shouted in a state of loss. Oh no, if even Mr. Kurosaki Makoto is defeated, Byakuya Kachika, who was still receiving emergency treatment, turned even paler. Chapter 658 Crushing Bang. In the end, Senju Makoto fell far away in the forest created by Uptrazal, stirring up a large amount of smoke and dust. The loud noise was like a hammer hitting the hearts of all the Shinigami. The one who fought against Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, defeated the Soul King Kyuga many times and saved the Soul Society, and was recognized by the entire GOTY 13th Division, lost. This is the main source of confidence for the Shinigami present to enter the Hutomundo, and is also the most important pillar of combat power. Run. Kachika Byakuya forced himself to stand up, and his figure flashed and appeared beside Soiloi Fong, with a pale and firm face. Captain Soiloi Fong, hurry up, take Nell and run. Soiloi Fong was stunned, and realized that this action would undoubtedly abandon all the companions present, and spoke subconsciously. But, no buts, don't forget our purpose. If you can't leave with Nell, then all sacrifices are meaningless. Kachika Byakuya said in a hurried tone. This sentence also made Soiloi Fong quickly firm up her faith. Unfortunately, that's impossible. You lose, Liu said, manipulating a large number of spirits to attack Soiloi Fong again. Bankai. Senbon Bancho as Byakuya Kachika dragged his seriously injured body and forced Bankai again. Countless cherry blossom petals flew out, surrounding Soiloi Fong to block countless attacks. And the sea of cherry blossoms quickly extended, creating a cherry blossom passage leading to the outside of the Palace of the Night. Soiloi Fong hugged Nell tightly in her hand, her figure flashed wildly in this cherry blossom passage, and broke away from the Palace of the Night at a very fast speed. Byakuya Kachika was desperately maintaining Senbon Bancho to block Liu's attack, and Soiloi Fong was flashing wildly at a speed that was unprecedented in her life. As long as Soiloi Fong could get out of the range of the Palace of the Night, then with the instant step speed of Soiloi Fong as the captain of the 2nd Division, it would be possible for her to escape the pursuit of the Palace of the Night and find a chance to return to the Seireitei. Hope is in my hands. At this moment, Soiloi Fong even spent her energy to maintain the instant boom, squeezing out all her speed. However, boom. The next moment, the second half of the cherry blossom passage leading to the outside of the Palace of Night was directly wiped out, and countless cherry blossoms were almost instantly annihilated. A familiar yet unfamiliar figure blocked Soiloi Fong's way. Aizen Sosok. But compared to the elegant and gentle 5th Division in his memory, the Aizen Sosok in front of him showed absolute arrogance in his eyes, and he was covered with a special patterned feather fabric that seemed to be composed of materialized spiritual pressure. It looked mysterious and could not be peeked into, and it was domineering and could not be looked at directly. When enemies meet, they are particularly jealous. Previously, it was learned that Senju Makoto was most likely killed by Aizen Sosok's sneak attack, and that Senju Makoto's soul was stolen for experiments, which made Soiloi Fong hate Aizen Sosok to the extreme. Die, Aizen Sosok. At this moment, blocked in front of her, Soiloi Fong realized that it was impossible to escape from the Palace of the Night. Her spiritual pressure suddenly exploded. She stared at Aizen Sosok with red eyes and shouted. Bankai Sparrow Raikau Whip. At the same time as Soiloi Fong's Bankai, Nell, who was in her arms, suddenly threw it in the direction of Kachika Byakuya. Moreover, after the Sparrow Raikau Whip was cracked when she faced Kurosaki Makoto last time, Soiloi Fong learned from her mistakes and quietly improved the way to use her Bankai. What kind of launcher, support frame, and protective layer to protect herself? All she really needs is the Sparrow Raikau Whip itself. As long as the Sparrow Raikau Whip itself can explode and drag Aizen Sosok into hell, that's enough. For a while, the Bankai Sparrow Raikau Whip only formed a projectile on Soiloi Fong's arm, and all the excess spiritual power was completely poured into the Sparrow Raikau Whip. However, just as Seireitei was about to detonate all the spiritual power she had infused into her, and fully exploded the Sparrow Bee Thunder Whip with 100 times the power. Puff! A flash of cold light flashed by so fast that Seireitei could not react, and Seireitei's right arm connected to the Sparrow Bee Thunder Whip was instantly broken, leaving Seireitei without the opportunity to detonate the Sparrow Bee Thunder Whip. How could it be so fast? As this thought flashed through Seireitei's mind, Seireitei, whose spiritual power had been drained and poured into the Sparrow Bee Thunder Whip, fell straight down from mid-air with blood spraying. Aizen Sasuke did not continue to look at Seireitei, as if he had just passed by and stepped on an ant to death. Ah, no, that is a pet that Makao-kun likes, so it is really difficult to control the strength of the stepping without hurting it. Aizen Sasuke thought silently. His eyes had already fallen on Nell, who was thrown out, and he spoke. Nell, you've made enough noise, we're leaving for Kurakura town. However, when Nell, floating in the air alone, slowly raised her head, her eyes, which had always been simple and innocent, burst into fierceness and murderous intent. By Aizen, you actually dared to kill my father, unforgivable. Unforgivable. Sin, Antelope Knight. As the words of the return to the blade sounded, Nell's tiny figure changed rapidly, and in almost the blink of an eye she returned to her queen form, her laser-like eyes staring at Aizen Sasuke. This actually made Aizen Sasuke develop a little extra interest in Nell. Nell and Stark were the only two hollows among the 10 Espadas who had achieved autonomous hollowing without the power of the Hogyoku, and after Nell's mask was shattered by herself decades ago, she would only passively return to her original form when she was a little emotional. At this moment, Nell actually returned to her original form by returning to the blade. It's not over yet, Aizen. Nell continued to recite softly. Second stage reincarnation. In an instant, in front of Ulquira's somewhat incredible gaze from a distance, Nell actually achieved second stage reincarnation, and her body shape and spiritual pressure once again changed dramatically. How is it possible? Besides me, there is actually someone who has mastered second stage reincarnation. It should be that only I achieved my first Arensei with the power of the Hogyoku, and then completed another autonomous Arensei before I mastered second stage reincarnation. Taking advantage of the moment when Ulquira was stunned, Haribal quickly got rid of Ulquira and shot straight towards Aizen Sasuke. Aizen. Haribal's tone was also filled with extreme anger and hatred. After Haribal had confirmed that Kurosaki Makao was Ashura-sama, facing the situation of life and death, Haribal's murderous intent towards Aizen Sasuke almost rose uncontrollably. Chapter 659. The Unreachable Truth. In an instant, Haribal and Nell, who had completed the second stage of the return to the blade, completely exploded with two completely different spiritual pressures belonging to the vastode level of the Great Hollow, and they simultaneously launched the strongest attack on Aizen Sasuke from different directions. Green Shot. Broken Waterfall. The two amazing spiritual pressures even shook the entire Kurono Palace. Vastode. The Great Hollow at the top of the Hukou Mundo, a high-level life form composed of the lives of hundreds of thousands or even millions of hollows. Even ordinary captain-level Shinigami are no match for the vastode Great Hollow. Now, the only two female Aranseis among the vastode-level Great Hollows launched the strongest attack on Aizen Sasuke in anger. Almost at the moment when the green shot and broken waterfall erupted, even the earth seemed to be stained with different colors at the same time, and swept towards Aizen Sasuke. The next moment, these two terrifying forces approached Aizen Sasuke at the same time. Aizen Sasuke still had that arrogant and calm attitude, as if it was just a breeze blowing in his face. Suddenly, just when the green shot and broken waterfall were about to touch Aizen Sasuke's eyes seemed to glow with white light, and a layer of spiritual pressure wall seemed to suddenly appear around his body. Boom. Green shot and broken waterfall hit the spiritual pressure wall at the same time, but it was as if they hit a towering mountain range. Until the last bit of power was completely eliminated, it was completely difficult to shake the spiritual pressure wall. The gap in dimensions cannot be made up by anger, Aizen Sasuke continued in a calm voice without a trace of ripples. But I commend you for your courage to betray me for your loyalty. Almost as soon as Aizen Sasuke finished speaking, a staggering line of blood splashed from Haribal and Nell's bodies, and the spiritual pressure of the vastode level hollows quickly withered. At that moment, neither Haribal nor Nell even knew how they were stabbed. Obviously, Aizen Sasuke has been staying in the same place without moving. As Haribal and Nell fell to the ground, this doubt emerged in their minds at the same time. As for Ichiro-jin, who was watching all this from afar, his forehead was covered with visible cold sweat, and he roared wildly in his heart. No, just now. When Haribel and Nell were slashed by Aizen Susuk, they had clearly met the conditions for touching the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, so why can't they see the truth? Haribel and Nell, who had touched the Mirror Flower and Water Moon personally, did not instinctively look at the source of the cut, and they were still subconsciously locked on the false figure created by Aizen Susuk. Could it be that it was wrong? The way to break the illusion of the Mirror Flower and Water Moon is not to touch the Mirror Flower and Water Moon itself. Just when Ichimura-jin was panicking, the figure of Aizen Susuk appeared in front of Ichimura-jin in an instant, causing Ichimura-jin's pupils to shrink, and then he spoke as naturally as possible. As expected of Lord Aizen, he suppressed the invader almost instantly after taking action personally. Aizen Susuk glanced at Ichimura-jin with a faint smile, and then ignored Ichimura-jin's compliment and said, "Order the 10 Espadas and subordinates to assemble and set off for Kurakura town." "Yes, Lord Aizen." Ichimura-jin responded subconsciously, and then after passing the order to the corresponding existence through the ghost way, he carefully asked, "Lord Aizen, what about the remaining invaders?" Upon hearing this, Aizen Susuk turned his eyes to Matsumoto Rangiku, who was closest and had been oppressed by his invisible spiritual pressure and was stiff and unable to move. Then, in the tense eyes hidden in Ichimura-jin, Aizen Susuk walked towards Matsumoto Rangiku step by step and slowly raised his hand. At this moment, Ichimura-jin's heart was fighting madly, and the zanpakutō divine spear hidden in his sleeve was already aimed at Aizen Susuk's back, which seemed to be defenseless. "This is a good opportunity to release the Bankai god-killing spear." "What do you mean by attacking the Soul King Palace for the soul of Senju's map?" "That's a lie." "No. I can't let Aizen get close to Rangiku. It's dangerous." "Dangerous?" "No. I'm not sure. What if this is just an illusion created by Aizen through the Mirror Flower and Water Moon? And what's the matter with Aizen's current form?" For a moment, under the crazy inner struggle, Ichimura-jin's face even turned pale. His eyes quietly stared at Aizen Susuk's every move, and his heartbeat was also accelerating crazily, until Aizen Susuk's palm gently rested on Matsumoto Rangiku's shoulder, causing Ichimura-jin and Matsumoto Rangiku's somewhat stiff bodies to tremble. "Vice Captain Matsumoto, can I ask you for a favor?" "What?" Matsumoto Rangiku responded subconsciously. "Please stay where you are and don't move. After the war is over, collect the bodies of my former colleagues for me." After saying that, Aizen Susuk patted Rangiku Matsumoto's shoulder again. The word full of contempt and arrogance made Rangiku Matsumoto's face flushed completely, and she instinctively wanted to refute Aizen. "You," however, just as Rangiku Matsumoto opened her mouth, Ichimura-jin instantly appeared beside Rangiku Matsumoto, and covered her mouth roughly with his palm, and the divine spear was placed on Rangiku Matsumoto's neck, saying, "Rangiku, shut up. The realm of Lord Aizen and the things he is looking at are not something you can question or evaluate." Seeing this, Aizen Susuk loosened his hand on Rangiku Matsumoto's shoulder and praised, "Jin, you are really my good subordinate." At this moment, a stream of existences emitting powerful spiritual pressure gathered behind Aizen Susuk from all directions. Sosrankaname, Stark, Bylajin, Ulkira, Zamali, Yami and other high-ranking warriors of the Hukoyo Palace, a large number of subordinate officers and some arances with special and strange appearances. As for Yuktresser, Rise Healu and Grim Zhao, they are still fighting with the Shinigami, and Aizen Susuk seems to ignore their existence. As a huge black cavity formed in front of Aizen Susuk, an arrogant voice echoed, "Gentlemen, the stage for the war has been set by the Gotti 13. Next, it is time for us to go and destroy them all and rule the Soul Society." Chapter 660 The War Begins. Chapter 660 The War has begun. At this moment, as Aizen Susuk's voice reached their ears, countless arances looked stern, and then their eyes focused on Aizen Susuk. Aizen Susuk walked towards the black chamber. Please wait a moment, Lord Aizen." Suddenly, a voice with panic and nervousness sounded. Then, a figure hurriedly half-knelt in front of Aizen Susuk, and spoke with a tone mixed with panic, excitement, nervousness, and joy. Lord Aizen, please take me to the world. I also want to contribute a little to Lord Aizen's hegemony." Aizen Susuk paused as he raised his foot to enter the black chamber, and his eyes turned and fell on the figure, revealing the other party's identity. Number 105 Teiruta Sandviki. Aizen Susuk's plain voice reached Teiruti's ears, but it seemed like the supreme reward and gift. The admiration and respect for Aizen Susuk in his eyes almost reached the point where he could not be suppressed. "It is a great honor to be remembered by Lord Aizen." Teiruti's voice trembled with excitement. When Seireitei finished speaking and raised his head, Lord Aizen, who had appeared in countless dreams, had already walked in front of him and was within reach. Once again, I saw Lord Aizen up close. Facing Seireitei's burning eyes full of admiration, Aizen Sasuke's eyes were still calm. This time, the Shinigami were able to invade the interior of the Palace of the Night thanks to your hard work. No, it's not hard, Seireitei answered subconsciously, and suddenly reacted. His face turned pale, and he hurriedly explained. Lord Aizen, I absolutely did not betray you. My original plan was to bring those Shinigami to the most heavily guarded area of the Palace of the Night. Lord Aizen, please believe me, I will absolutely. At this moment, Seireitei was so anxious that she even cried, and her trembling voice was filled with tears. However, before Seireitei could finish, Aizen Sasuke raised a finger and stopped in front of Seireitei, emitting a light representing death. The light reflected Aizen Sasuke's still calm expression and the words that continued to be transmitted to Seireitei's ears. Your loyalty and betrayal are not worth mentioning at all. Seireitei, the unforgivable crime you committed is to offend my best friend as ugly, dirty, and shameless. This matter makes me really unbearable. Seireitei's pupils shrank, and she felt a buzzing in her ears, and her head was almost a mess. Why? Lord Aizen. Why do you treat me like this? I admire you so much and am so loyal to you. Ugly, dirty, shameless. I seem to have only described that queency in this way. How could he be a close friend of Lord Aizen? The next moment, with the flash of light representing death, Seireitei's figure completely disappeared from the world. However, in the eyes of everyone except Aizen Sasuke, Seireitei was still half kneeling on the ground and asking for a fight. Aizen Sasuke stood in front of the black cavity to comfort Seireitei, saying that the dangers of the war were not suitable for Seireitei to participate in, and asked Seireitei to continue to stay in the Palace of the Night. Finally, Seireitei seemed to be completely convinced and respectfully stepped aside. Aizen Sasuke continued to step into the black cavity, followed by Tosen Kaname and Ichimura Jin, and the rest of the 10 Espadas entered one by one. Until the last Seireitei who gathered under the order of Aizen Sasuke disappeared into the black cavity, the huge black cavity was quickly closed. When Aizen Sasuke led the 10 Espada and stepped into the black cavity amidst the gathering of many huge spiritual pressures, the surveillance measures arranged in advance by the Technology Development Bureau almost instantly detected the abnormality. Ding ding ding. A rapid and unique sound rang out in the Seireitei, and the eyes of many top combat forces of the GOTY 13 who were assigned combat missions in advance were fixed at the same time, and then they all rushed to one direction of Rukonge in an emergency. In the direction, there was a Karakura town that was almost a one-to-one replica. When Yukita Jushiro, who had specially prepared some things and arrived a little later than the other combat forces, arrived at the designated location, almost all the Shinigami in the plan had arrived here. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, who was standing at the front, glanced at Yukita Jushiro with his squinting majestic eyes, and did not scold Yukita Jushiro for his slow action when he saw the thing in Yukita Jushiro's hand that was blocked by the black cloth. Boom. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni knocked his cane, exuding a mighty aura that made it difficult for people to look directly at him. Move immediately. The next moment, the ghosts who were waiting around activated the reincarnation pillar at the same time, and the entire replica of Karakura town quickly resonated with the reincarnation pillar set up by the real Karakura town in the real world. Strong spatial fluctuations covered the entire replica Karakura town. The Shinigami in it only felt a daze, and when they regained consciousness, the surrounding environment changed drastically, and they had already arrived in the real world. The huge replica Karakura town swapped positions with the real Karakura town, and the real Karakura town was temporarily transferred to the Soul Society. The Shinigami who were originally responsible for stationing in the real world, such as Kakushansui, Hitsuge Yatshiru, and Zaki Kenpachi, as well as Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishidarai, quickly joined Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni. Karakura town was suddenly forcibly relocated. Does it seem that the real war is about to begin? Hitsuge Yatshiru asked in a hurried tone. In response to Hitsuge Yatshiru, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni swept his majestic eyes and shouted. Don't have the slightest fluke, Captain Hitsuge. This is war. These words made all the Shinigami feel a chill in their hearts. At this moment, not far from Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni and other Shinigami, a series of black chambers opened up, accompanied by a huge spiritual pressure sweeping across. The Shinigami present couldn't help but breathe a little faster. One after another, Seireitei figures emitting terrifying spiritual pressure walked out of different black chambers, causing the pressure in the Shinigami's hearts to continue to grow. Finally, in the black cavity at the center, Sasuke walked out under the greeting of many Seireiteis. His posture was calm and his eyes were full of arrogance and indifference. The Gotti 13 reflected in Sasuke's eyes seemed to be just some ants. What shocked the Shinigami present was that they could not sense Sasuke's spiritual pressure at all. Chapter 661 The advantage is ours. What's going on? Why can't I sense Sasuke's spiritual pressure? Did Sasuke deliberately hide his spiritual pressure? Or is it the effect of the Hogyoku? No, what's wrong with Sasuke's posture? As Kikuchansui said this, the Shinigami noticed that Sasuke's outfit was completely different from the Seireitei and Shinigami. The clothes on his body looked like a story from a distance, and it seemed a special existence formed entirely by materialized spiritual pressure. However, there is something made up of spiritual pressure on Sasuke, so why can't I sense the existence of spiritual pressure? This strong and strange sense of conflict is like when an ordinary person is excited to get close to teacher Yoi at an offline meeting, but feels something hit in his lower abdomen. The impact that completely contradicts common sense makes the Shinigami present feel that their hearts are shrouded in a haze. And Joshiro seemed to have thought of something, quietly approached the direction of Kurosaki Ichigo, and spoke in a low voice. Ichigo, is there a feather garment formed by the materialized spiritual pressure on Aizen that you saw? Yes. Kurosaki Ichigo, who also frowned, nodded. Then can you sense the spiritual pressure of Sasuke? Joshiro said in a heavy tone. Upon hearing this, Kurosaki Ichigo asked back in surprise. Can't Captain Yukitik sense it either? Suddenly, Joshiro's expression became completely solemn. Originally, Joshiro was still wondering whether Sasuke was deliberately making a mystery through the ability of Mirror Flower Water Moon, but theoretically, Kurosaki Ichigo and Seireitei have not been hit by the illusion of Mirror Flower Water Moon, so all this is real. However, Joshiro, who quickly calmed down, thought for a while, and reminded Kurosaki Ichigo and Seireitei. Ichigo, Rai, don't join the battle easily. Please always pay attention to whether we have some strange behaviors induced by the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, and then remind us in time. Okay. Kurosaki Ichigo responded. As for Seireitei, he maintained a cold attitude of ignoring the Shinigami, and just stared at the direction of Sasuke without saying a word. From the standpoint of Kurosaki Ichigo and Seireitei, they joined this war, in addition to protecting Karakura town, but the main reason was the choice of Kurosaki Makoto. Sasuke looked at the 13th Division of the Gotti headed by Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, and his eyes casually swept over the captain-level Shinigami one by one, and finally looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and Seireitei, and said, "The people are quite complete." At the same time, in addition to Sasuke's unknown attitude, the Shinigami were also collecting and analyzing the rest of the information about Sasuke and his party. The absence of Harable, Grimjow, Rupi, Nell and Zaraki made the first judgment made by the captains, including Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, that Sasuke chose to let part of the combat force delay Kurosaki Makoto and Unohana Retsu's group. This may not be bad news for the Gotti 13. In the absence of many combat forces, the pressure that the Gotti 13 needs to bear will naturally be reduced accordingly. And the part of the combat force left by Sasuke will definitely not be the opponent of Kurosaki Makoto and Unohana Retsu's group, so as long as they can delay enough time in the real world, it is very likely that Kurosaki Makoto and Unohana Retsu's group can still support the real world. Based on the information exposed by both sides, Kikuchansui deduced the most likely development of the situation and made a judgment silently. The advantage is on us. As for Sasuke's slightly strange situation, Kikuchansui was not too worried. After all, they still had Captain Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, who held the title of the strongest god of death. No matter how tricky Sasuke's Mirror Flower Water Moon and Hingoku were, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni would not easily fall behind. This belief has almost become a common-sense idea for the god of dead like Kikuchansui, who have been shrouded in the prestige of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni for countless years. Sasuke. However, compared with Kikuchansui's optimism, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's tone clearly revealed a solemn shout. Then, without waiting for Sasuke to answer, the cane in his hand instantly returned to a zanpakutō, Raijin Jaka. Unsheathed. With the most explosive and hot flames, the prelude to this war was ignited. Castle Flame. Instantly, the surging flames swept towards Aizen Sasuke, isolating him like a giant hand. The huge spiritual pressure that erupted from Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni in an instant also attracted the attention of the 10 Espadas present. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni stared at the castle flame that isolated Aizen Sasuke, and after a few breaths, Aizen Sasuke did not break through and escape. This made Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni breathe a sigh of relief. It seems that Aizen Sasuke has not reached that level yet. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni felt a little relieved, but he still unconsciously felt a sense of urgency and crisis in his heart. This feeling, even when he faced Youthwatch 1,000 years ago, it was not so strong. This also made Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni directly give up the decision of slowly testing and delaying time, and ordered directly. Aizen Sasuke should not be able to escape from this 6,000-degree flame for the time being. During this period, the goal is to cut off Aizen Sasuke's followers at the fastest speed. This order, which was different from the initial decision, made the Shinigami present stunned, and then quickly responded. Yes. At the command of Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, except for Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai, all the people on the side of the 13th Gotti squad attacked almost at the same time, each heading towards the 10 blades or subordinate officers who were initially selected. For a time, the war broke out directly. However, compared with the fierce battle outside the castle flame, where some spiritual pressure began to weaken or disappear rapidly, Aizen Sasuke, who was trapped in the castle flame, still had such an arrogant and calm expression. Lord Aizen, don't we want to find a way to escape? The Aaron says may not be able to withstand the siege of the Gotti 13. Ichimura Jin said with concern. It doesn't matter, Jin. After all, this is a war that both sides have been looking forward to for a long time. It would be too boring if it ended all at once. Hearing Aizen Sasuke's disapproving answer, Ichimura Jin's heart sank. After all, Ichimura Jin directly felt the changes in Aizen Sasuke's spiritual pressure during his evolution in the Palace of the Night. He knew that the reason why he could not sense Aizen Sasuke's spiritual pressure was probably because the gap was too big. Chapter 662 The Significance of Birth. At the same time, at the Kainyaku Palace, as Aizen Sasuke seemed to have deliberately eliminated the threat of Kurosaki Makao and then stepped on a few wands, he led a large army out of Hutomundo and headed for Kurakura town with a king-like attitude. As for those who stayed behind at the Kainyaku Palace, only Uruhilu, Grimmjow and Yakuza were left. However, as Nell and Hannibal stood on the opposite side of Aizen Sasuke and were almost instantly killed by Aizen Sasuke, Grimmjow stopped fighting with his Atashuni. Nell. Grimmjow tried to shout in the direction where Nell fell, but there was no response. Let go, Death God. As the situation developed to this point, Hizajishue also realized that it was meaningless to contain Grimmjow. After a slight hesitation, he released his Bankai and ran quickly towards Nell with Grimmjow. In addition, the Aaron says such as Matsumoto Rangiku, Izaneo, Kachikabyukaya and Apache also headed in the direction of Nell. The terrifying suppression power displayed by Aizen Sasuke made everyone worry about the situation of Soifong, Hannibal and Nell. However, Uruhilu, who had to faithfully execute Aizen Sasuke's orders, attacked the Shinigami without hesitation. Because Zaraki Fire had already integrated a huge amount of spirit particles over a large range through the ability of spirit particle illusion in order to monitor the situation of Hutomundo as much as possible. Now, all these spirit particles have become a part of Uruhilu that can be controlled, and it attacks the Shinigami. Although Kachikabyukaya, Hizajishue and Grimmjow undoubtedly captain-level combat forces, they are all seriously injured or exhausted. This also led to a time when Uruhilu had a great advantage in the situation of one against many. If it weren't for the help of Beast God Yong, Matsumoto Rangiku, and Izaneo, I'm afraid that Uruhilu would have probably defeated Kachikabyukaya and others. However, even though the situation seemed to have entered a war of attrition, with the huge amount of spirit particles, the situation was undoubtedly still tilting in the direction of Uruhilu. And Unohana, who really had the ability to change the situation, had no intention of paying attention to the predicament of Kachikabyukaya and others. When Senju Makao fell from the dome with blood all over his body, Unohana only felt a buzzing in his ears, and his brain fell into a brief blank. Then, what happened in the outside world, Unohana didn't care at all, but desperately went in the direction where Senju Makao fell. And following the instinct set by Aizen Sasuke for himself, Yakuza frantically manipulated the endless giant trees to continuously attack Unohana, trying to delay Unohana's pace. Since the birth of Yakuza, The idea that Aizen Sosok is infused into it is to defeat Unohana. Endless giant trees continue to break out of the sand, entangled with each other, and turned into wooden dragons and wooden men pressing towards Unohana. Sometimes, Yggdrasil also had a brief thought. Obviously, his ability can do more. Why does Lord Aizen require him to fight only in this way? And why must Unohana be defeated? What is the meaning of my birth? In the eyes of Lord Aizen, I seem to be just a substitute. Countless giant trees turned into debris under Unohana knife, and countless giant trees continued to fall one after another towards Unohana. This hollow make based on the Yanlao Jindai merged a huge amount of hollow vitality with Aizen Sosok's ability of Benlu and forcibly fixed it into the ability of Senro Onxiang. Yggdrasil has no emotions, and even his thoughts were roughly set by Aizen Sosok to defeat Unohana. He only retained a lot of fighting instincts to ensure that he could use the ability of mourning in the forest to fight. However, just like the selfless Jillian born from the mutual devouring infusion of countless ordinary hollows, he has a very small probability of giving birth to self-awareness, thus creating the possibility of evolving to the next stage. While Yggdrasil was fighting with Unohana according to the set thoughts, he gradually began to doubt and tried to have a simple understanding of himself. What is the meaning of my birth? However, Yggdrasil's obstruction undoubtedly completely angered Unohana. Boom. Unohana, who rarely held the knife with both hands, cut off countless giant trees with just the sword pressure. And Unohana eyes, which showed murderous intent, were constantly flowing over every giant tree around. Yggdrasil manipulated the boundless forest, but in order to clearly judge Unohana every move and obstruct it, Yggdrasil's body must be in a position where he can see Unohana. However, Yggdrasil seemed to have turned into a part of the giant tree, constantly changing his position, which made it impossible to confirm the position of Yggdrasil's body. In the end, Unohana gave up looking for Yggdrasil with his eyes, and instead slowly closed his eyes. The sounds around him became clearer and noisier. Unohana, who closed his eyes, faced the attacks of the wooden dragons, wooden men, etc. that continued to attack, and continued to move towards the direction where Senju Cheng fell in the countless flying wood chips. The attacks on Unohana became more and more intensive. I don't know why, Yggdrasil instinctively wanted to obstruct Unohana contact with Senju Cheng, as if their contact would make Yggdrasil feel that the meaning of his existence would be even thinner. Yggdrasil was also constantly moving among the giant trees, keeping a certain distance from Unohana, while constantly manipulating the increasingly dense giant trees to bombard Unohana. As Unohana closed his eyes and continued to run towards Senju Cheng, Yggdrasil's heart inexplicably grew emotions called anger and destruction. Look at me straight. Why? It seems that I was born to defeat you, but you don't even want to open your eyes. What am I? Destroy everything. At this moment, Unohana seemed to have sensed something, and the footsteps that were constantly moving forward suddenly turned, and he took a special stance towards a direction where there was no attack. All in an instant. Chapter 663 Difference and Reincarnation. In an instant, it was unclear whether it was the blade or the person who was faster. Unohana turned into the brightest blade light for a moment, and then sank into a giant tree. The next moment, the entire forest that was constantly boiling and surging, seemed to be quiet in an instant. The large amount of sawdust on the surface of the giant tree that the zanpakutō had sunk into quickly dissipated, revealing the body of Yggdrasil that was almost not even in human form, and then slowly lowered his head to look at the zanpakutō that pierced through his body, and asked, "How is it possible? How did you detect my location? You can hide your figure, spiritual pressure, voice, etc. But you can't hide your eyes full of anger and murderous intent." Unohana said in a cold tone, then quickly drew out his zanpakutō, and with another backhand, he beheaded Yggdrasil cleanly and neatly, and continued to move towards Senju Cheng without stopping. The flying head of Yggdrasil looked at the rapidly receding Unohana, and inexplicably had a moment of enlightenment. So, I have anger. Then, is it the heart? Unohana did not answer, nor did he mean to stop for Yggdrasil. However, the moment before Yggdrasil's head hit the ground, it turned into spirit particles and dissipated into the air. In the end, what fell to the ground was just a broken zanpakutō. Without Yggdrasil's obstruction, Unohana rushed to the place where Senju Cheng fell almost at a speed. However, unlike the situation he was worried about, Senju Cheng seemed to be sitting leisurely on a tree trunk without any damage, and raised his hand to greet Unohana. Unohana teacher. At this moment, Unohana Retsu's heart was full of joy and anger. He walked to Senju Makoto's side, and then, bang! Unohana Retsu hit Senju Makoto's head hard. It hurts, it hurts. Makoto Senju covered his head and cried out in pain, which made Unohana Retsu, who was still angry and wanted to attack 3 times in a row, stop subconsciously. He looked at Makoto Senju with a bit of tension and concern. Did I use too much strength? Unohana Retsu, who had undergone countless precision surgeries over the past 1,000 years and was an expert in the use of strength, was now doubting himself. His strength should only hurt Makoto, but not to the extent of injuring him. However, just before Unohana Retsu, who was worried and confused, was about to react, Makoto Senju, who had grasped the timing accurately, took advantage of Unohana Retsu's distraction and quickly explained. Unohana-sensei, I have temporarily formed an alliance with Aizen Sasuke, so the scene just now was a play I performed in cooperation with Aizen Sasuke, and I was not injured. After a pause, Makoto Senju did not forget to praise Unohana Retsu and said, on the contrary, Unohana-sensei is really amazing. He was able to catch the moment of Yakutra's eyes completely by relying on his fighting instinct. Makoto Senju, who was always paying attention to the direction of the battle in the Kainyaku Palace, was indeed surprised by that scene. Perhaps, ordinary humans occasionally have a subtle feeling of being watched by others behind them, but Unohana Retsu was in an extremely complex and chaotic environment, but he was extremely accurate in confirming the specific location of Yakutra by relying on the change of his eyes at that moment. At this moment, Makoto Senju also understood why Aizen Sasuke had been particularly cautious and fearful towards Unohana Retsu in the past in Seireitei. Unohana Retsu's amazing fighting instinct undoubtedly has the possibility of restraining Mirror Flower Water Moon. However, I'm afraid that even Aizen Sasuke did not expect that Yakutra, who should not have emotions, would have angry emotions due to complex and subtle factors, which led to Unohana Retsu's location being discovered. Otherwise, the power that Yakutra can exert can be regarded as top-level torture for a swordsman like Unohana Retsu. After being interrupted by Senju Makoto, Unohana Retsu did not pay attention to trivial matters for a while, and asked with a slightly frowned brow. Have you confessed your identity to Aizen Sasuke? Yes. Senju Makoto replied. Aizen Sasuke, Unohana Retsu pondered for a moment and answered. When I first saw this man in the Seireitei, my combat instinct told me that the man was not simple, even though Aizen Sasuke was just an ordinary member of the 13th Division at the time. The man's mind is deep and unpredictable. If I cooperate with him, if it is only for the control of the Seireitei, I think the risk is a bit too great. Listening to Unohana Retsu's evaluation and suggestions, Senju Makoto could not help but nodded. The degree of danger of Aizen Sasuke, perhaps no one in this world knows better than Senju Makoto. Even in the original trajectory facing the threat of Yhwach in the future, when the Seireitei was about to be destroyed, Kakushansui had to try to seek help from Aizen Sasuke, who was sealed in the hell, and he only dared to unlock the seals on Aizen Sasuke's mouth, left eye, and ankle. As an enemy, we must not have the slightest fluke or underestimate Aizen Sasuke. But as an ally, he is extremely reassuring. Senju Makoto sighed, and then he tapped his fingers in front of him, and the spirit particles condensed into more than 10 screens reflecting the battle in the real world, clearly reflecting the battle between the GOTY 13 and the 10 Espada in the real world. Seeing this, Unohana Retsu simply sat next to Senju Makoto and looked at the screens. And Senju Makoto continued to speak. Under my influence, Aizen Sasuke's evolution unexpectedly reached the critical point of mastering the name. Although it is still unclear what name Aizen Sasuke will master, the monk has been guarding against the possibility of others mastering the name for decades. Therefore, the only way for Aizen Sasuke to truly master the name is to cooperate with me. So based on the judgment of the position, Aizen Sasuke will be an ally who is completely consistent with my position. At least, before Aizen Sasuke truly masters the name, I judge Aizen Sasuke to be trustworthy. Unohana Retsu nodded and asked back. What if the monk is successfully dealt with? Once Aizen Sasuke successfully masters the name, his threat may not be comparable to that of a monk. Senju Makoto heard this and fell into silence for a moment. His eyes seemed to have become a little more distant, and he murmured. But if we forbid others from touching name, how is that different from what the monks are doing now? Will it be another reincarnation after tens of millions of years? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. we're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 664. Killed in one shot. Obviously, Makoto Senju has no answer to this question yet, and neither does Unohana Retsu. Even from a longer-term perspective, this involves institutional changes related to the underlying logic of this world. However, Makoto Senju is now quite clear about one thing, that is, the alliance with Aizen Sasuke is beneficial and harmless from the current point of view. At least, the current war situation in the real world is developing in the direction that Makoto Senju hopes for. Boom. After Aizen Sasuke and Ichimura were temporarily trapped by Castle Flame, the Arances and the Shinigami completely opened the curtain of the melee, and each captain selected their own opponents. Komamura Sujin vs Tosunkane, Kakushansui vs Stark, Hitsuge Iachiro vs Bylajin, Zaraka Kinpachi vs Young Mai, Korosachi Meiri vs Somali Lulu, Yukita Joshiro vs Aaron Iroh. As for the rest of the vice captains and some of the extremely strong specially summoned officers, they also fought against the many 10 blades who followed them. Casualties soon appeared. Or rather, Ulquiorra, who had no extra captains to resist him, brought to spare like a dimensionality reduction attack when he attacked the vice captain or chief officer level Shinigami. Although, the 3 who tried to block Ulquiorra together were Tetsuya Shota, Rinji Aburai, and Ayakaku Megurumi. However, after just one encounter, Tetsuya Shota's chest was pierced by Ulquiorra's right hand. As Ulquiorra pulled out his hand, a heart was beating violently in his palm. Ulquiorra glanced at it calmly, and with his 5 fingers clasped together, the hot heart was completely turned into powder in Ulquiorra's hand. And Tetsuya Shota's sturdy body also fell directly at Ulquiorra's feet. Vice Captain Shota. Beast, damn it. This scene made Rinji Aburai and Ayakaku Megurumi shocked and angry. Since the 3 of them were once members of the 11th Division, and they were all passionate and righteous friends, they knew each other's strengths very well. Although Tetsuya Shiba had not yet truly mastered Bankai, he was already infinitely close to mastering Bankai, and his strength was definitely not that of an ordinary vice captain. It was for this reason that, although the spiritual pressure emitted by Ulquiorra was desperately heavy, in the absence of an extra captain to spare, the 3 of them united to prepare to stop Ulquiorra. 2 Bankai, 1 infinitely close to Bankai, in the eyes of Aburai Rinji and Megurumi Ayakaku, even if they could not defeat Ulquiorra, they should be able to hold him back firmly. However, in just a moment, when he could not even see how Ulquiorra attacked, Tetsuya Shiba was killed. Ulquiorra's eyes slowly turned, passing over the body lying at his feet, looking at Aburai Rinji and Megurumi Ayakaku, and asked calmly, "Is it the heart that drives you to ignorantly block my way?" However, Ulquiorra's eyes, as if looking at an ant, undoubtedly completely angered Aburai Rinji, and he drew out the zanpakutō from his waist and pointed it at Ulquiorra. "Don't get carried away here, bastard, Bankai. Baboon's King Snape Tail Ball." The next moment, the spiritual pressure of Aburai Rinji surged, and the zanpakutō in his hand quickly transformed into a giant snake skeleton composed of countless detachable joints. "Hey, Rinji, don't get angry." Megurumi Ayakaku hurriedly opened his mouth to try to remind Aburai Rinji, but with his friendship with Tetsuya dead, Aburai Rinji almost did not hesitate to manipulate Baboon's King Snape Tail Ball to bite Ulquiorra. In an instant, under the explosion of the Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill, the huge shadow seemed to submerge and crush Ulquiorra's figure. The Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill opened its bloody mouth and bit directly at Ulquiorra. However, facing this seemingly powerful Bankai, Ulquiorra's expression was still calm without a ripple. He just raised his right hand, and in a flash, he appeared on the side of the Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill's head and nodded casually. Boom. The entire huge head of the Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill was blown away in an instant. This scene made Aburai Rinji's pupils shrink, revealing full of disbelief. After mastering the Bankai, Aburai Rinji also sparred with captain-level Shinigami many times in private, but most of them were aimed at the exposed joints of the Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill's body that seemed to be connected by spiritual pressure to launch attacks and crack them. As for the Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill's head, which had the strongest attack and destructive power, most of them chose to avoid its edge. However, before Aburai Rinji could come to his senses, Ulquiorra's figure disappeared from his sight, and a sense of danger of death approached. However, Aburai Rinji only had time to turn his eyes, and Ulquiorra's figure had already appeared in front of Aburai Rinji, and his palm with 5 fingers together was aimed at Aburai Rinji's chest again. At this moment, Aburai Rinji had already vaguely felt his fate. There was no time to dodge, and there was no time to retract the Baboon's King Snape Tail Ball to resist. At this critical moment, Madarame Ikaku's shining bald head blocked Abarai Rinji in front of him, and his zanpakutō seemed to be blocking his chest as if he had predicted it. Dang! With a crisp sound, Ulquiorra's 5 fingers together hit the zanpakutō in Madarame Ikaku's hand, and then a huge impact force poured out, but it still blasted Madarame Ikaku and Abarai Rinji away at the same time. Ulquiorra did not pursue, but just looked at Ikaku Madarame, who was blown away and climbed up in a somewhat embarrassed manner, and said with some surprise, "With your speed, you shouldn't have been able to block this blow for your companion in time. Why?" Prediction. It was prediction. Ikaku Madarame glanced at the clear fingerprints left by Ulquiorra on his zanpakutō, and said with his eyebrows twitching fiercely, "I'm best at fighting against strong enemies, and when facing weak people, strong people will always subconsciously solve the weak people with a habitual action." Ulquiorra, who understood, commented, "I see, it was an instinctive reaction based on the wound on the chest of another companion. A very good fighting instinct." After a pause, Ulquiorra looked at Rinji Abarai, who climbed up in a mess, and said, "If I remember correctly, you should be the captain's adjutant named Byakuya Kachake. It's a pity that compared to Byakuya Kachake, you don't seem to have learned any advantages." Chapter 665. A desperate posture. Byakuya Kachake, Captain. Rinji Abarai heard this and asked Ulquiorra with an excited expression, "You know the captain? Have you seen the captain in Hukou Mundo?" "Yes, I won and he lost," Ulquiorra stated. "Impossible." Rinji Abarai heard this and subconsciously refuted. Ulquiorra's tone was still unusually calm. "This is just a fact, but judging from a warrior, Byakuya Kachake is undoubtedly a respectable opponent. Giving up everything and betting everything on the White Emperor sword is quite good." At this moment, Rinji Abarai fell silent completely. White Emperor sword. That was undoubtedly the last move that Byakuya Kachake bet everything on. If Ulquiorra had not really fought Byakuya Kachake, then Ulquiorra would not have known this move. And the fact that Ulquiorra could appear here intact is enough to prove the final result of that battle. Compared with the rough-tempered Rinji Abarai, Ikaku Madarame seemed quite calm at this time and spoke. "Then I wonder if you can tell me where the other captains are in Hukou Mundo?" Ulquiorra answered in his calm voice. "Lord Aizen personally took action to deal with Kurosaki Makoto. Judging from the time, the other Shinigami are probably close to being wiped out." As soon as these words came out, both Madarame Ikaku and Abarai Rinji felt that something was wrong. The team that gathered nearly half of the GOTY 13's combat power and also had Mr. Kurosaki Makoto join them was actually close to being wiped out. Ulquiorra's answer not only made a considerable number of Shinigami who were paying attention to the battlefield here shrink their pupils, but also 2 figures fell directly behind Ulquiorra. "Ulquiorra, what were you talking about just now? How is Uncle Kurosaki?" Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai asked Ulquiorra almost at the same time. "Dead." Ulquiorra's answer was still so cold and brief. Ulquiorra witnessed the whole process of Kurosaki Makoto falling from the dome. His blood-stained body, his indelible spiritual pressure, and the shocking aftermath of Aizen Sussex blow that almost completely destroyed the entire dome. All of this made Ulquiorra's judgment based on reason. Kurosaki Makoto will definitely die. However, this answer is undoubtedly unacceptable to Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai. "Impossible, absolutely impossible. My Uncle Kurosaki is invincible." "That's right, even the captain can only fight against Uncle Kurosaki on equal terms. How could he be defeated by Aizen Sussex?" "You are lying." Facing the angry eyes of Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai, Ulquiorra's answer was to condense a moonlight sword made of spirit particles in his hand and wave it towards Kurosaki Ichigo, who was closest to him. Facing this sudden attack, Kurosaki Ichigo, who entered the Bankai state in advance, instinctively swung a crescent moon sky strike. Boom! The blue moonlight almost instantly tore the black crescent moon apart, and hit the Tensei Zanjutsu heavily, sending Ichigo Kurosaki flying backwards. Muscle dragon form. The next moment, the weak scholar like Ishirai suddenly swelled into a muscular monster, and a huge shadow enveloped Ulquiorra. Iron Mountain Lean. The amazing brute force between the trembling muscles of Ishirai's body was transmitted from the well-defined muscles behind him and gathered at one point. Explosion. Ulquiorra had never expected such a strange move to exist, and when Ishirai's shoulder hit his chest hard, he realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. Boom. A huge wave of air exploded instantly. Ulquiorra's chest faintly collapsed, and the whole person was instantly knocked away like a rag. Good opportunity. Seeing this, Seireitei completely lost his martial ethics and manipulated the baboon's king Snapetail Mara, who had just recalled his head. A large amount of spiritual pressure gathered frantically towards the mouth of the baboon's king Snapetail Mara. Suddenly, a red energy ball similar to the virtual flash condensed at the mouth of the baboon's king Snapetail Mara, and then quickly blasted towards Ulquiorra, who was flying backwards. In an instant, a huge deep pit appeared in front of everyone, and the rising smoke also obscured the situation in the deep pit. However, Seireitei, who was quite confident in his new moves, grinned subconsciously and said, "Finally, this tricky monster was solved." Before Seireitei finished speaking, the smoke in the deep pit dissipated instantly, and the huge spiritual pressure of despair like the abyss of hell burst out from Ulquiorra, who was in the deep pit with his black wings spread out. Even though they were clearly in the real world, with Ulquiorra as the center, a large number of materialized black spiritual pressure raindrops continued to fall. Second stage return blade. At this moment, Ulquiorra's figure has changed a lot compared to before. He seems to have truly transformed into a real black-winged demon, with black feathers, bad claws, and a devil-like tail. In an instant, just the display of this figure and the amazing spiritual pressure it exudes made Madarame Ikaku and Seireitei feel as if there is a heavy ocean pressing on their hearts. Resist. Is this really a force that can be resisted? Even Madarame Ikaku, who has been pursuing fighting strong enemies all his life, subconsciously had this idea in his heart. At this moment, Ulquiorra even became the focus of everyone's attention in Karakura town, with the desperate and admirable figure, and the desperate and heavy spiritual pressure like the sea. After pulling away from Stark, Kakushansui, who was fighting with Stark, couldn't help but look in the direction of Ulquiorra with a full of solemnity in his eyes and spoke. "Did I choose the wrong opponent for this Ratsu? That guy is the real no one, right?" Stark also looked lazily in the direction of Ulquiorra and said, "It's really hard to say. That posture should be what Ulquiorra has after he performed the autonomous Aaron Sayer again. With this amazing Ratsu and Ulquiorra's fighting ability, if I re-rank them, I may not be able to keep the no one position." After a pause, just as Kakushansui's expression became more and more solemn, Stark spoke with some surprise. "But why didn't you say that Ulquiorra could become no naught? Could it be that Soul Society doesn't know that there is a no naught among the 10 Espartas?" At this moment, Kakushansui was really stunned and blurted out a question. "What? Isn't no one the highest among the 10 Espartas? There is actually a no naught." Stark scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said, "Oh, it seems like I accidentally provided some incredible information. P.S. These 2 chapters are Shout special. Also, I would like to ask for a monthly ticket. Please, thank you everyone." Chapter 666. Power developed by others. As the captain of the Intelligence Division, Kakushansui's expression was wonderful. The 10 Espada actually counted from 0 to 10. More importantly, the entire Soul Society knew nothing about the mysterious no naught before. Kakushansui quickly swept his eyes across the chaotic battle in Karakura town, trying to find a suspicious object, and said secretly, "Is it Aizen's hidden biggest backup?" However, now the Aranses and Shinigami in the entire Karakura town have completely fought each other, and Kakushansui scanned the area, but found nothing. Or has no naught already sneaked into Soul Society? This guess made Kakushansui break out in a cold sweat, and his eyes were locked on Stark, testing him. "I wonder if Mr. Stark can satisfy my curiosity a little more. There are beings above you among the Aranses. I'm really curious." For Stark, who has also spent countless long and lonely years, decades of time are just a blink of an eye. The figure who once fought against Aizen Sosok soon emerged in his mind, and he sighed. "That guy is indeed much stronger than me." "Oh?" Kakushansui's eyes lit up slightly. "However, although I am not familiar with that guy, we can barely be considered as companions. I can't deliberately expose his information, so I'm sorry." Stark yawned and continued lazily. "Can we just confront each other like this until the end of the war?" "That won't work. My old man has already glanced at me several times." While speaking, Kakushansui released the zanpakutō in his hand, and his figure flashed towards Stark and said, "Unless you talk to me about the problem of no naught, we can talk slowly. Then it seems that we can only have a troublesome battle," Stark said, and the double guns in his hands almost did not delay the accumulation of power. In an instant, a large number of extremely powerful flashes burst out and flooded towards Kakushansui. In an instant, half of the buildings in Karakura town were covered and submerged by the azure light of the flashes. The amazing visions caused by Stark and Ilkira respectively caused strong dissatisfaction in the heart of Bailijin, who was sitting on the golden throne. As the former king of Hukomundo, the limelight on the battlefield was actually snatched away by the two descendants of Vastod. This was undoubtedly unacceptable to Bailijin. And Bailijin looked down at the dwarf god of death standing in front of him, and his face showed obvious anger, and said, "What? Is there no one left in the 13th Gotti squad? Or have you forgotten my fear and despair, and actually let this brat who is still wet behind the ears fight me? Go away. I don't want to play house games with a brat like you. Let Yamamoto Janraisai Shijakuni come to see me." These words of disdain and contempt made Hitsuge Ichiro's eyebrows jump fiercely. However, compared to those weak arguments, Hitsuge Ichiro prefers to prove himself with actions. Bankai. Great Crimson Lotus Horinmari as the 12 petals of ice flowers condensed from Hitsuge Ichiro's head. Hitsuge Ichiro, who seemed to have transformed into half an ice dragon, exuded a strong chill all over his body. In an instant, a large number of snowflakes condensed by spiritual pressure fell down, and the entire Karakura town seemed to drop more than 10 degrees in an instant. This scene that changed the celestial phenomenon also made Bailijin's contemptuous expression more serious. Hitsuge Ichiro's cold eyes locked onto Bailijin, who was still sitting on the throne, and he spoke softly. 1,000-year ice prison. Suddenly, before Bailijin could react, the moisture in the air centered on Bailijin condensed, and instantly formed a giant bicycle in front of Hitsuge Ichiro that was more exaggerated than a 100-story skyscraper. Bailijin, who was sitting on the throne, was frozen in the center of the 1,000-year ice prison. At this moment, the amazing ice-making capacity of the Great Red Lotus Horinmari in Hitsuge Ichiro's hand was undoubtedly several times stronger than in the past. It was for this reason that Hitsuge Ichiro confidently chose to stand in front of No. 2 Bailijin. However, using this much stronger power than in the past, Hitsuge Ichiro's face did not show any joy, but instead his eyes revealed bursts of coldness. After all, this powerful power was not developed by Hitsuge Ichiro himself. But since the last time Soul King Kyuga took Horinmari away by force, and after using it for a while, when Hitsuge Ichiro got Horinmari again, he suddenly found that the power that Horinmari could exert was several times stronger than before. However, this power was developed by the enemy, not by himself, which was undoubtedly a blow and injury to Hitsuge Ichiro's strong self-esteem. Therefore, every time Hitsuge Ichiro used the Great Red Lotus Horinmari, he felt a sting in his self-esteem. But in order to protect the Soul Society and maintain world peace, Hitsuge Ichiro had to face and endure this humiliation and pain. Hitsuge Ichiro, with a colder face, looked down at the zanpakutō in his hand and swore secretly. Horinmari, wait, I will tell you who is your real master. I will definitely develop you to a higher level, using the power I developed myself. Then, just as Hitsuge Ichiro turned around to support the other Shinigami in their battle, he suddenly felt something. Kid, you don't think you've won, do you? Bailijin's voice came out from the Millennium Ice prison, revealing anger and arrogance. Who do you think you're fighting? Do you think a little bit of cold can freeze me? The next moment, a black mist spread out from the ice pillars, and the ice pillars melted and decayed in an instant wherever they passed. Bailijin, who walked out of the Millennium Ice prison step by step, also changed his image. He was no longer the burly and strong white-haired old man just now, but turned into a skeleton covered in black flames and full of oppression. Only decay is eternal. Bailijin looked down at Hitsuge Ichiro in front of him, and a huge axe connected by a chain suddenly swung towards Hitsuge Ichiro. The black mist wrapped around the axe made Hitsuge Ichiro instinctively aware of the danger. Ice wall arrays the wings of the ice dragon behind Hitsuge Ichiro shook and it quickly retreated. Large pieces of ice combined into an ice wall in the blink of an eye to block the front. Chapter 667 Six Cars Fist West. Chapter 667. Road Guru Mei, Kensei. The next moment, the giant axe wrapped in the smell of decay chopped on the ice wall. Bang! With a loud noise, the giant axe got stuck in the ice wall. Just as Hitsuge Ichiro breathed a sigh of relief instinctively, the ice wall began to melt rapidly wherever the smell of decay spread. La la! A sound of chains rang out. Just as the ice wall melted and a gap appeared, Bailijin pulled the chain to retract the giant axe, and his figure quickly appeared in front of Hitsuge Ichiro, and the giant axe in his hand suddenly chopped down at Hitsuge Ichiro. The next moment, the giant axe chopped on Hitsuge Ichiru's body. However, unlike the expected rapid decay of flesh and blood, Hitsuge Ichiru shattered like an ice cube. Ice virtual image. The real Hitsuge Ichiru appeared behind Bailijin, and the cold air emanating from his body became more and more shocking, and the snowflakes falling from the sky became more and more dense. Although the amount of snowflakes and the cold air were far less than the Soul King Kiko, who easily covered the entire Seireitei garden and brought the entire Seireitei garden into a world of ice and snow. However, it undoubtedly far exceeded the limit of the power of the great Red Lotus Horinmara that Hitsuge Ichiru had once exerted. Ice Sky 100 Flowers Burial. The 12 petals of ice flowers on Hitsuge Ichiru's head also shattered 4 petals at the same time. At this moment, in Bailijin's shocked and puzzled eyes, with his body as the center, pieces of extremely cold ice flowers began to bloom crazily and submerged himself in them. The chill that permeated the entire Karakura town also seemed to reach its peak at this moment. Except for the vicinity of Castle Flame, the rest of the entire Karakura town has dropped below 0 degrees. The area centered on Bailijin has an iceberg composed of countless blooming ice flowers. At this moment, whether it is the Aransei or the Shinigami, they can't help but be shocked by the power displayed by Hitsuge Ichiru. Even Mamo Hinamirai, who was fighting an Aransei subordinate named Find Orcalias, couldn't help but briefly linger her gaze on Hitsuge Ichiru. Heiku is so amazing. Has she finally succeeded in developing the power of the strongest ice-type zanpakutō? If Heiku is like this, maybe he can stop Captain Aizen and make him change his mind. Even in the battle with Bailijin, Hitsuge Ichiru, who was still paying attention to Mamo Hinamirai's fighting situation from time to time, soon noticed that Mamo Hinamirai's eyes seemed to have a little more yearning and hope. This made Hitsuge Ichiru, who had a cold face, inexplicably feel a little uneasy, and felt a strange feeling rising in his heart. As a childhood sweetheart who grew up in Rukongei, this was the first time Hitsuge Ichiru felt this kind of gaze from the cute little Mamo. However, at the moment when Hitsuge Ichiru lost consciousness, bang! The iceberg formed by the gathering of hundreds of flowers quietly decayed and a big hole was formed. Bailijin, with a lot of ice debris still remaining on his skeleton, suddenly shot towards Hitsuge Ichiru. By the time Hitsuge Ichiru reacted, Bailijin had already approached him to a very dangerous distance. Oh no! Hitsuge Ichiru's pupils shrank. As the Aransei with the most information about abilities in Soul Society, Hitsuge Ichiru knew that he must not fight Bailijin in close combat, otherwise, if he was accidentally contaminated with a little bit of decay, his entire spirit body might be completely decayed in an instant. Death side. This time, Bailijin had completely realized the degree of threat that Hitsuge Ichiru could bring to him, and he did not underestimate or hold back at all. After approaching Hitsuge Ichiru to a certain distance, the decayed aura on Bailijin's body spread towards Hitsuge Ichiru frantically. For a moment, Hitsuge Ichiru, who was not good at speed, could not escape from the cage of decay and was trapped in a desperate situation. Bailijin did not give Hitsuge Ichiru a chance to breathe, and the giant axe wrapped in decay in his hand chopped directly at Hitsuge Ichiru. Hitsuge Ichiru did not dare to resist with the blade of the great Red Lotus Horinmara, otherwise once the zanpakutō blade was decayed, the situation would undoubtedly be worse. In a critical situation, Hitsuge Ichiru did not have more time to think. Hitsuge Ichiru almost instinctively controlled the ice dragon tail formed after Bankai and swung it towards the giant axe. Bang! The impact caused by the collision between the giant axe and the ice dragon tail, the giant axe was also bounced back in the middle of the splashing ice chips. However, a wisp of decay was also stained on the ice dragon tail, and it quickly decayed everything it touched at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hitsuge Ichiru took the initiative to disconnect the ice dragon's tail to prevent the decayed aura from contaminating the spirit body. However, with Bailijin's delay, Hitsuge Ichiru's chance to escape from the encirclement of the decayed aura was completely cut off. It's over, kid, you were about to pay the price of your life for offending the king of Hukomundo. Bailijin spoke to Hitsuge Ichiru in front of him in a condescending manner. As for Hitsuge Ichiru's face, it was extremely ugly. He was thinking about how much chance he had of surviving when he was wrapped in ice and forced to break through the cage made of decayed aura. According to the known information, the decayed aura can destroy all tangible substances. This made Hitsuge Ichiru's heart sink, and he realized that even if he gambled his life, he would probably be in danger. At this moment, a hearty and heroic voice came from afar. Ha ha ha, sorry, I'm a little late. Captain Hitsuge, don't be afraid, I'm Kensei Rokurume here. Bankai, Iron Fist. Broken Wind. In an instant, Kensei Rokurume, who exuded a standard captain-level spiritual pressure, broke into the battle area between Hitsuge Yachiro and Bailijin with great strength and boldness. Let's stir up a storm. The next moment, Kensei Rokurume waved his fist at Bailijin and Hitsuge Yachiro from a distance, and a terrifying hurricane was visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, Hitsuge Yachiro realized something and his face was filled with joy, and his body was quickly covered with several layers of ice. Wherever the hurricane passed, not only were the snowflakes caused by the great red lotus Horinmara blown away, but the cage of decay breath that permeated around Hitsuge Yachiro was instantly blown away without a trace. After Hitsuge Yachiro dispersed the ice layer with a slight smell of decay on his body, he quickly retreated without any damage, distanced himself from Bailijin, and stood side by side with Rokurume Kensei. At this moment, Rokurume Kensei showed his dignity and demeanor as a senior. Chapter 668. Assistance from the Masked Legion. At this moment, although Bailijin had no expression due to his skeleton appearance, the fire crows in his eye sockets looked at Kensei Ngurume with a hint of anger. "I'm sorry," Kensei Ngurume, who maintained his bankai, said to Bailijin without fear. "It seems that my ability perfectly restrains you, Bailijin. Only blood and wind will not decay." And Hitsuge Yachiro also spoke with some gratitude. "Thank you for your help, Senior Ngurume. No, it should be said that we came a little late, but it seems that we caught up," Kensei Ngurume said, and then pointed to the side of the entire battlefield, and all the other members of the Masked Corps, led by Hirako Mako, appeared. As the Masked Corps joined the battlefield forcefully, the tense expression of Shunsui Kikuyu, who was fighting fiercely with Stark, could not help but ease a lot. Unlike the original trajectory, the Gotti 13 had no prior knowledge of the Masked Corps assistance. The current Gotti 13 has already considered the Masked Corps as an important combat force. Otherwise, with only less than half of the captains of the Gotti 13 present, it would be impossible to truly eliminate these terrifying Aranseis. "Hey, everyone is fighting so lively, do you need some beautiful music to ease the tense atmosphere?" However, for the pretentious behavior of Hirako Mako and Ukiyo-jira, Seireitei Hiri obviously would not tolerate it at all. He directly hit Hirako Mako and Ukiyo-jira's back of the head with a pair of slippers. Bang! Bang! "Don't pretend to be cool here, don't you see the current situation, two idiots?" Seireitei Hiri said, and then took the lead to rush towards Kusaka Yaorai, who was being chased by two Aranseis below, and shouted, "Yaorai, I'll help you." Hirako Mako touched the back of his head, complained helplessly, and then said, "Really? That's why I'm still not used to being around idiots." After a pause, Hirako Mako's eyes became serious, and she quickly took in the entire battlefield. The most difficult member of the Espada, Stark, and Kikuyu Shunsui were fighting fiercely, and it was difficult to determine the winner. With the help of Kensei Rokurume, Hitsuge Yachiro's crisis had been mostly resolved, and the clash between Kinpachi Zaraki and Yamai was becoming more and more shocking. On the contrary, Mayuri Kurosaki, who was famous for his weak fighting ability in the past, took the lead and easily solved his opponent, Samarilulu, and seemed to have happily collected Samarilulu as research material. As for the battle between Tosen Kaname and Komamura Sajin, it seemed that most of the time they were fighting with verbal battles. The only two Espada members who had an absolute advantage on the battlefield, besides Ulkira, were Aranilo Welrueri. And the one who was fighting against Aonilo Ililili was obviously the veteran captain of the 13th Gotti Division, Yukita Joshiro. However, the captains were not the ones who had the most pressure in a normal battlefield, but the vice-captains and chief officers who were fighting against many subordinate officers. You know, almost all the subordinate officers have the strength to fight against the standard captain-level Shinigami, which also made the casualties of many vice-captains and chief officers appear in numbers visible to the naked eye. Hirako Mako quickly judged the situation and spoke in a hurry. "Hakujin, you go to help Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishidarai, and the rest of you go to eliminate those subordinate officers." Then, Hirako Mako's figure flashed and rushed to the battlefield of Aonilo and Yukita Joshiro, but before Hirako Mako could get close, Yukita Joshiro and Aonilo retreated violently in the collision, but shouted at Hirako Mako, "Don't come over, Hirako, cough cough cough, this, cough, is my fight." "What?" Hirako Mako was stunned, looking at Yukita Joshiro, who kept coughing with some confusion, but his expression was extremely determined. And Aranilo, who was standing in front of Yukita Joshiro and exuding the spiritual pressure of the Aransei, also smiled strangely and spoke to Yukita Joshiro. Captain, as expected, you still love me. You don't want Captain Hirako to hurt me, right? When Arenilo spoke, Hirako Mako subconsciously cast his eyes on Arenilo's face. His expression was stunned and blurted out. Kuroseki Ichigo? No, that's not right, the hair color is different. That look is the look of my former vice captain, cough cough, Shibukayan. Yukita Joshiro stood up with his zanpakutō in both hands, staring at Arenilo in front of him, and spoke with a serious, sad, solemn and regretful tone. I personally went to the Shiba family to invite Hein to be my vice captain. Due to physical reasons, Hein helped me handle almost all team affairs. That's right, Arenilo, who possessed all of Shiba Hein's memories, said playfully. The captain once made a lot of promises to me, such as letting me inherit the position of captain of the 13th Division in the future, and taking care of the Shiba family, which is already on the verge of decline. After a pause, Arenilo questioned Yukita Joshiro with a soul-searching question. Captain, after I die, how will the Shiba family lie? Are my sister and brother okay? Will they be driven out of the Seireitei? In an instant, Yukita Joshiro's body shook visibly, and he subconsciously exclaimed. No, Hein, I have tried my best to save the Shiba family, but I... Cough cough cough. At this point, Yukita Joshiro coughed violently in excitement, and even blood was clearly seeping out from the gaps between his fingers covering his mouth. When Yukita Joshiro's cough eased a little, his lips moved, but he did not continue to say any words of defense. Although Yukita Joshiro has a very high status in the Seireitei, the influence of a captain alone is undoubtedly not enough to prevent the decline of the four nobles. Originally, with the support of Shiba Kayan, the vice-captain of the 13th Division, and Shiba Ishin, the captain of the 10th Division, the Shiba family would not have declined directly. However, with the death of Shiba Kayan and the disappearance of Shiba Ishin, the entire Shiba family has undoubtedly become a young child guarding a huge treasure house. What Yukita Joshiro can do is to protect Shiba Kayan's sister and brother during the annexation of the Shiba family led by the Tsuneshiro family, and place them in the safe Cheng-ge area. If it weren't for Yukita Joshiro's protection, the only remaining Shiba family member would not even be able to leave the Seireitei. Chapter 669. Twisting Flowers. However, the one in front of him was not the real Shiba Kayan after all, and Yukita Joshiro still failed to fulfill his promise and failed to protect Shiba Kayan's sister and brother. I'm sorry, Kayan. Yukita Joshiro said with a sadness that was hard to conceal in his eyes. Hearing this, Arenilo imitated Shiba Kayan's tone and said, It's useless to apologize, Captain. Why don't you go to hell with me? Yukita Joshiro coughed a few times and replied. I will find you in hell and apologize to you sincerely, Kayan, but now is not the time. Then, under the gaze of Hirako Mako, Yukita Joshiro raised the zanpakutō in his hand and chanted. All the flowing waves, turn into my shield. All the lightning, turn into my blade, Pisces principle. However, when he saw Yukita Joshiro performing the shy guy, Aronilo's expression did not show any fear, but he spoke. Captain, I know your zanpakutō's ability very well, and how long can your body sustain you in the battle? How about, Arenilo said with a strange expression. Why don't you let the captain be devoured as well, and stay with me in this body? In this way, I can continue to be the captain's adjutant forever. Don't try to confuse my mind, no. 9 Arenilo will lie. Yukita Joshiro's eyes sank and he shouted. In that case, let me and the captain have a good fight again like we did decades ago. As Arenilo's voice fell, Arenilo raised his zanpakutō and chanted. Let's you eat and say Karmake, twisting flowers. Suddenly, in the shocked eyes of Yukita Joshiro and Hirako Mako, the zanpakutō in Arenilo's hand turned into a trident-shaped spear. And this is the ability of Shiba Kayan's zanpakutō. I can actually, even perfectly replicate the abilities of my zanpakutō. Hirako Mako's tone revealed disbelief. That's right. Arenilo spoke with pride and confidence. My ability is to devour spirits infinitely, and take the abilities, spiritual pressure, and memories of the other party as my own, so no matter how you look at it, I am Shiba Kayan. Captain, are you going to hurt me? The next moment, Arenilo's figure suddenly shot towards Yukita Joshiro, and the twisted flower in his hand rolled up the waves of spiritual power and stabbed at Yukita Joshiro. Dang! Yukita Joshiro blocked this blow that was almost a memory reappearance with one hand, and subconsciously raised the zanpakutō held in his other hand to chop at Arenilo. However, as Arenilo turned his head, that familiar and guilty face made Yukita Joshiro's movements suddenly pause, and the change in his emotions made Yukita Joshiro cough again. Ahem. At this moment, the flower twisted and suddenly moved upwards towards Yukitijushro's head. A trace of blood splashed in the air, and then was quickly swallowed by the waves caused by the flower twist. Yukitijushro's figure shot back, quickly distanced himself from Aronilo. A deep wound on his cheek that could see the bone made Yukitijushro's delicate and pretty face look a little more embarrassed. Captain Yukituk. Seeing this, Hirako Mako, who was standing on the side, pressed one hand on the hilt of the knife at his waist and subconsciously wanted to attack. Judging from the spiritual pressure exposed by Aronilo at present, Aronilo was not particularly strong at all. The reason why he could cause great trouble to Yukitijushro was undoubtedly because Aronilo transformed into the appearance of Shiba Sea Swallow. Please, Hirako. However, Yukitijushro's voice sounded again, stopping Hirako Mako's action. Ahem, let me send Hino for the last time. This is the last thing I can do as the captain. However, Yukitijushro's words, which touched Hirako Mako greatly, made Aronilo laugh. Captain, the last thing you should do for me is to enter my body. I have been looking forward to this moment for a long time. Then I can completely merge with the captain. The only response to Aronilo was the ghost arts that Yukitijushro released in succession. Hatsudo no. 31. Red Fire Cannon Hatsudo no. 32. Yellow Fire Flash Hatsudo no. 33. Blue Fire Fall. For a moment, Yukitijushro showed his top attainments in ghost arts. These ghost arts that abandoned the power of chanting and were not inferior in the slightest flooded towards Aronilo. Moreover, Yukitijushro seemed to have deliberately chosen the fire-related Hado. Large swathes of flames of various colors and powers flooded towards Aronilo. Even Hirako Mako, who was at the edge of the battlefield, felt the temperature rise a lot. Captain, are you really at your wit's end? Are you trying to restrain me with the fire-related Hado in order to restrain the power of the twisting flower? Or do you think I can't fully exert the power of the twisting flower? Aronilo said sarcastically, while spinning the twisting flower in his hand and stabbing it into the ground in front of him. In an instant, with the twisting flower as the center, large waves spread in all directions, and even the surrounding terrain began to change. As the direct descendant of the Shiba family, Shiba Keian's zanpakutō ability is undoubtedly completely different from Shiba Ishin's side branch, but this does not mean that Shiba Keian's zanpakutō ability is not strong. To be more precise, it is very strong. Otherwise, Yukitijushro would not have gone to great lengths to personally invite Shiba Keian to serve as his adjutant. In a sense, just like the position that Senju Cheng had in Unohana-retsu's eyes at first, Shiba Keian was the person who could replace Yukitijushro as the captain of the 13th Division in the future. The waves roared, a large number of fire-type broken paths were almost instantly submerged. At this moment, holding the twisted flower in the shape of a trident spear, Aronilo seemed like a sea god standing in the vast ocean, and the twisted flower in his hand pointed in the direction of Yukitijushro. In an instant, the vast ocean seemed to be completely rioting, and madly submerged Yukitijushro's position. Cough cough cough, facing the rolling waves, Yukitijushro kept coughing, but his figure did not have the slightest intention of dodging. Boom. With a loud noise. In the shocked eyes of Hirako Mako, Yukitijushro was completely submerged in the surging waves. Hirako Mako subconsciously shouted. Captain Yukituk. Chapter 670. Changes in the situation. Aronira's face showed a smile of victory, and he stepped on the waves and spoke. Captain, I didn't expect that even though it was the same zanpakutō in my hands after devouring 33,650 hollows, the power was far beyond the Shibakin in your memory. As Aronira's voice fell, the waves that submerged Yukitijushro slowly subsided, revealing the figure of Yukitijushro who seemed to be floating in the water and unconscious. At this moment, looking at Yukitijushro who seemed to have no ability to resist, Aronira's face showed obvious greed. Not to mention the value, even though Shibakin was a vice-captain from one of the four nobles, it was completely different from Yukitijushro's value. In addition to the simple spiritual pressure and ability, what is more important is that after devouring Yukitijushro and obtaining all his memories, the entire Soul Society will have almost no secrets for Aronira. With this thought, Aronilo realized that the chaos of the battlefield would not give him much time, and he almost rushed towards Yukitijushro without hesitation, intending to devour him by force. However, Aronilo, who was dominated by desire and greed, did not notice that Yukitijushro's zanpakutō had not yet released the Seireitei. Moreover, the 5 signs on the chain connecting the 2 Pisces were completely lit up by the figure of Yukitijushro lying in the water. Just when Aronilo got close to a certain extent, Yukitijushro's tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, and the Pisces held in his right hand pointed in the direction of Aronilo and said, "Arensei, die in greed, die under the power of the sea petrel." In an instant, the 5 layers behind Yukitijushro, which stored the power of the twisting flower absorbed by the wave impact just now, instantly burst out towards Aronilo. Aronilo stared with his eyes wide open, but he was completely unprepared and had no chance to dodge this attack. Why? Yukitijushro, who was obviously very weak, should have been knocked unconscious by such an attack. Why? Why could Yukitijushro's zanpakutō absorb the impact of the waves? In the next moment, the energy shot released by the power of the twisted flower completely submerged Aronilo, not giving Aronilo any chance to think. Boom! The amazing energy beam not only washed over Aronilo's body, but also penetrated for several miles, leaving a huge gully in Karakura town. After the energy beam completely dissipated, Aronilo's upper body had completely disappeared, and the twisted flower that had been released and fell to the ground was rapidly decomposing. Hirako Mako, who wanted to stop Aronilo from devouring Yukitijushro, slowly landed beside him and found that Yukitijushro's eyes were filled with obvious sadness as he stared at the twisted flower. "This will be the last echo of the sea petrel," Yukitijushro said slowly. Mako Hirako weighed her words and said, "Vice Captain Shiba will be relieved to know that Captain Yukitiku avenged him." "No, it was Hein who avenged himself with his own strength," Yukitijushro said, and then he gently wiped his eyes with his fingers. His expression quickly returned to that weak yet resolute look, and said, "Hirako, the war is not over yet, and now is not the time to relax." "That's right." Mako Hirako's expression also straightened, and then he looked around the battlefield again. With the strong entry of the Masked Corps into the battlefield, the situation has begun to tilt in the direction of the Gotti 13. Although the 10 Espada level Arensei are still fighting fiercely, the Gotti 13 can at least maintain a balance. As for the other numerous subordinate officer level Arensei, they are about to be wiped out. Then, Mako Hirako stared at the fiercely burning flame in the air and said, "Captain Yukitiku, even if the situation has been reversed, the most troublesome guy hasn't made a move yet. Aizome Sasuke." Yukitijushro's tone was full of solemnity when he said this name, and then he looked at a direction of the edge of the battlefield and waved. And Code Subaki Sentaro and Code Subaki Kian, who were hiding as far away from the edge of the battlefield as possible, saw Yukitijushro's actions, and hurriedly each held a large object covered by a black cloth, and quickly rushed to Yukitijushro, and carefully placed the object in front of Yukitijushro. "What is this?" Hirako Mako asked with some confusion. Yukitijushro first nodded gently to Code Subaki Sentaro and Code Subaki Kian, and said, "Thank you for protecting this thing. In the next battle, you just need to protect yourself first." Then, Yukitijushro lifted the black cloth, and it was a wooden shield with an ancient shape and a wooden spear, and then said, "Originally, I didn't want to use this thing, but I brought them here just to be prepared. I didn't expect that Aizen Sasuke's changes were far beyond my expectations, so I had to prepare to use them." However, Hirako Mako frowned and looked at the wooden shield and wooden spear in front of him, which seemed to be nothing special except for their simplicity. He was full of confusion. "Is this some special artifact?" Hirako Mako asked. "Yes, or in other words, they are real artifacts." After a pause, Yukitijushro's expression became more solemn and he said, "Because they are weapons that the Soul King once used." "What?" Hirako Mako's pupil shrank and he exclaimed, "Of course, there are extremely harsh conditions for using them. I'm the only one in the entire Seireitei who can barely use them." Yukitijushro's voice sank, and he did not continue to explain, but said instead, "Captain Hirako, I'll need you to protect me for the next period of time. There are many preparations to be made before using them." "No problem." Realizing the importance of this, Hirako Mako agreed without hesitation, and his hands began to set up a barrier with Yukitijushro as the center without stopping, to shield Yukitijushro's figure and hide his spiritual pressure. At this moment, in the raging flames of Castle Flame, the spiritual pressure of Somali Lulu, Aronilo Lili and many subordinates dissipated one after another. Each Imurajin maintained his fox-like expression and spoke. "Lord Aizen, the situation seems a little bad. If it continues like this, all my subordinates will be wiped out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 671, Blazing Hell. It's okay, Aiden Sussex' tone was still so calm. Jin, don't you think the Kynia Palace is too noisy sometimes? The useless experiments are sometimes too annoying. Isn't it a good thing to sort them out with the help of the Gotti 13? If the Seireitei heard what Aizen-sama said, I'm afraid many of them would be sad. Ichimura Jin said. Jin is sometimes too kind-hearted. He even cares about the feelings of the ants at his feet. After a pause, Aiden Sussex continued. But Jin's reminder is not wrong. The Kynia Palace also needs some people to fill it, otherwise it will seem too lonely and boring. Ichimura Jin heard this and asked with a hint of playfulness in his tone. Then how is Aizen-sama going to get out? However, before Ichimura Jin finished speaking, Aiden Sussex's eyes fixed. Bang! The castle flame that seemed to burn everything disappeared so abruptly. No, to be more precise, the swaying trend before the castle flame disappeared was as if it was oppressed by the materialized spiritual pressure. However, I couldn't feel the spiritual pressure. This time, Ichimura Jin stood behind Aizen Sussex, but still couldn't feel the spiritual pressure from Aizen Sussex. Cold sweat unconsciously seeped out on Ichimura Jin's forehead. And Aizen Sussex's voice sounded again, reaching Ichimura Jin's ears. Jin, if you feel hot, why didn't you say it earlier? This mere firefly light can be extinguished by blowing. Ichimura Jin's expression froze slightly, and he didn't know how to answer Aizen Sussex. Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, who exuded a terrifying sense of oppression, appeared in front of Aizen Sussex. His slender and majestic eyes slowly opened, and the Raijin in his hand was burning with flames that seemed to burn everything. A mere sinner, you are so arrogant as to call my flame the light of a firefly. Aiden Sussex's mouth curled up slightly, revealing an arrogance that was almost beyond words, and answered. Even if it's not far off. Aizen, you will pay the price for your arrogance. When Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni said this, the anger in his tone was almost extreme, and the blazing flames rose above the Raijin. At this moment, no matter how fierce the battles in other areas of the battlefield were, almost all the Shinigami and Seireitei subconsciously stopped their actions and looked in the direction of Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni and Aizen Sussex. In the eyes of almost everyone, this was definitely a battle between kings, and the victory or defeat would most likely directly determine the direction of the entire war. And Arashoda Bokijin, who was assisting Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishida assist Ulquiorra, suddenly thought of something and spoke in a hurried voice. Ichigo Kurosaki, quickly leave this battlefield and get closer to the edge of the battlefield between Aizen Sussex and Captain Yamamoto. If Aizen Sussex confuses Captain Yamamoto with the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, the answer you give, which is not affected by the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, will be an important basis for Captain Yamamoto to judge it as false. Upon hearing this, Ichigo Kurosaki stared at Ulquiorra. As an opponent, Ichigo Kurosaki has never seen such a powerful, perfect and oppressive existence. Even if he used all the means such as Bankai, Kendo, and Hollowization, Ichigo Kurosaki still felt a deep powerlessness in front of Ulquiorra's second stage of return to the blade. That was, the feeling of being completely crushed. Even with the combination of Arashoda Bokijin and Ishida, they could only barely tie with Ulquiorra. However, this also made Ichigo Kurosaki unconsciously ignite a raging desire to fight against Ulquiorra. Okay. However, in the face of the overall situation, Ichigo Kurosaki nodded after a slight hesitation, and quickly left the battlefield and headed towards Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni and Aizen Sussex. Seeing this, Ulquiorra closed his 5 fingers, and a thunder spear of extremely powerful and terrifying power condensed in front of him, and then suddenly threw it towards Ichigo Kurosaki. Don't try to influence Lord Aizen. In an instant, the air was torn apart. Even wherever the thunder spear passed, it brought a destructive blue color to the world. When Arashoda Bokijin saw this, his face condensed, and his face was instantly covered with a mask belonging to a hollow. While his spiritual pressure soared, his hands made a strange posture. The 81st way of binding. Broken sky. Re-performance in an instant, 2 walls of brokerage were instantly formed in front of Arashoda Bokijin. Boom. The first wall of Danko was destroyed almost instantly when it touched the Thunder Spear. When the power of Thunder Spear hit the second wall of Danko, it was completely released and raged, instantly submerging the second wall of Danko including Arashoda Bokijin. Ichigo Kurosaki, who was moving away at an astonishing speed, noticed the movement behind him. When he turned his head subconsciously, his pupils couldn't help shrinking. Ulquiorra's attack almost destroyed nearly a quarter of the area of Karakura town, leaving an astonishing black pit. However, just when Ichigo Kurosaki couldn't help but worry about Ishidarai and Arashoda Bokijin, he found that Ishidarai helped Arashoda Bokijin, who seemed to be seriously injured, to rise into the sky. "Just go quickly," Arashoda Bokijin said to Ichigo Kurosaki from a distance. Seeing this, Ichigo Kurosaki gritted his teeth and continued to shoot towards Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. At this time, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni took the lead in attacking Aizen Sasuke, and the burning and terrifying spiritual pressure burst out at the same time. Blazing hell without a trace of reservation. With Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni as the center, dozens of sky-high fire pillars that seemed to be able to burn everything rose up, causing the temperature of the entire Karakura town to soar to a level that humans could not bear at all. Aizen, your zanpakutō mobility may be tricky, but when the blazing hell erupts, the power is enough to turn the land with a radius of 100 kilometers into hell. In the rolling heat wave, Aizen Sasuke's attitude is still so indifferent, saying, "Oh? Captain Yamamoto is so direct. Are you ready to use this indiscriminate large-scale attack to break the ability of Kagami Water Moon right from the start?" "That's right," Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni said majestically. "Aizen Sasuke, your ambition and conspiracy will be completely reduced to ashes in this flame." The next moment, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni didn't even see how Aizen Sasuke drew his sword. When Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni reacted, a flash of sword light swept past his side, but what puzzled Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was that the flash of sword light was not aimed at him, but instead cut a Seireitei that had approached behind him at some point into two pieces. Chapter 672 No, it's not an illusion. Puff. Wonder-Wise felt his body suddenly break into two pieces, blood splattered, and deep doubts were revealed in his eyes when he looked at Aizen Sasuke. Then, Wonder-Wise's eyes, which reflected Aizen Sasuke's calm expression, quickly dimmed and completely lost all their luster, and his whole body quickly disintegrated and dispersed into spirit particles. At this moment, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni and Ichimura Jin, who was watching from afar, were a little stunned. Especially Ichimura Jin. Ichimura Jin knew very well that Wonder-Wise was similar to Yggdrasil, a special Seireitei specially transformed by Aizen Sasuke. At the cost of losing language, consciousness, knowledge and reason, Wonder-Wise must have gained some special power. Although Ichimura Jin didn't know the specific ability of Wonder-Wise, based on the name of the sword fire extinguishing prince that Wonder-Wise had revealed, Ichimura Jin naturally guessed that the meaning of Wonder-Wise's existence was Aizen Sasuke's secret weapon against Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. However, why did Aizen Sasuke kill Wonder-Wise himself? Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni also didn't understand Aizen Sasuke's behavior. Although he was unknowingly approached by such an Seireitei, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni didn't think that the weak spiritual pressure could seriously injure him. "Aizen Sasuke, what do you mean?" Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni asked. "Don't worry about it. It has nothing to do with Captain General Yamamoto," Aizen Sasuke responded with an extremely arrogant attitude. He clearly killed the Seireitei who attacked Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, but it seemed that it was not for Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni at all. This extreme arrogance and contempt, even with the character of Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, could not help but be angry. Aizen Sasuke seemed to be completely unaware of Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's anger. Instead, he looked around at the dozens of fire pillars of the blazing hell that had already begun to affect the sky and terrain, and said calmly, "Captain Yamamoto, you used to be decisive in killing, but why are you hesitating and not taking action? Are you really old?" In response to Aizen Sasuke, dozens of sky-high fire pillars rolled over, and the extreme flames destroyed everything along the way. Even Ichimura Jin, who had been as far away from Aizen Sasuke as possible, and Kurosaki Ichigo, who had just arrived nearby, could feel a terrifying rolling heat wave rolling over. At this moment, the entire Karakura town seemed to have turned into a huge furnace, and the position where Aizen Sasuke was located was the center point where countless raging flames intersected and collided. Kurosaki Ichigo tried his best to open his eyes wide, staring at Aizen Sasuke's figure completely submerged and covered by the flames, confirming that this was not an illusion. Boom. The next moment, the power of the dozens of fire pillars that gathered together exploded completely. First, the ring-shaped airwaves exploded in all directions, and then the terrifying high temperature swept around, and the scorched earth visible to the naked eye spread wildly. Seeing this, Ichimura Jin did not dare to underestimate it in his heart. He did not want to be swept into the power of Raijin-jaka at all. When his figure was about to retreat quickly, suddenly, an unimaginable and amazing spiritual pressure descended. At this moment, everyone in the entire Karakura town suddenly felt as if the sky was collapsing. The raging flames were instantly suppressed, and the scorched earth that was about to spread to Jinichimura's feet also stopped abruptly. Vice-captains or subordinates could not hold on for even a breath and half knelt down. Even a captain-level Shinigami like Kensei Rokurume felt a sense of terror as if he was being oppressed by the spiritual pressure and could hardly breathe. Karakura town, which was originally full of chaos, suddenly became quiet at this moment. It seems that you can feel my spiritual pressure a little bit. At this moment, Aiden Sasuke's voice was clearly heard by everyone, as if he was stating some fact. Yes, even if the spiritual pressure of a high-dimensional level is truly fully erupted, it will still slowly spread and weaken over distance, and then be slightly sensed by weaker beings. However, at this moment, no one refuted Aizen Sasuke's extremely arrogant words. Whether it was the Gotti 13 or the members of the Masked Corps, they all subconsciously showed an expression of disbelief on their faces. How can there be such an exaggerated spiritual pressure? Just using spiritual pressure to destroy Captain General Yamamoto's fiery hell. It's a lie? Isn't it? It's an illusion, isn't it? As this thought grew, Kakushansua seemed to be holding on to a glimmer of hope, and asked from a distance in the direction of Kuroseki Ichigo. No. Kuroseki Ichigo's pupils shrank into a dot, only to see Aizen Sasuke suddenly appear in front of Kuroseki Ichigo. Under fear and fighting instinct, Kuroseki Ichigo almost subconsciously swung a crescent moon sky stripe towards Aizen Sasuke, and even unconsciously covered Kuroseki Ichigo's face with a hollow mask, further greatly increasing Kuroseki Ichigo's spiritual pressure. However, facing Kuroseki Ichigo's almost beyond limit sword, Aizen Sasuke did not even raise his hand to block it. The terrifying black crescent moon naturally disintegrated when it approached Aizen Sasuke at a certain distance. Aizen Sasuke glanced at Kuroseki Ichigo, stretched out his hand and casually patted the non-existent dust at the location where the crescent moon sky stripe bombarded, and said, Kuroseki Ichigo, don't be afraid, you just need to use your eyes to confirm everything you see, and then answer Captain Kaku's question. Kuroseki Ichigo subconsciously stepped back a few steps, pulling away from Aizen Sasuke, bit his teeth fiercely, stared at Aizen Sasuke, and shouted loudly. No, it's not an illusion. That scene, this sentence, made many Shinigami's hearts sink. At this moment, a cruel fact was completely placed in front of everyone. Aizen Sasuke has definitely transcended the scope of Shinigami and entered a higher realm. Just like ordinary humans without spiritual power, it is impossible for them to cause effective damage to Shinigami, so as Shinigami, is there any possibility for them to defeat Aizen Sasuke? Despair. Even the Shinigami who were determined to win beforehand couldn't help but feel powerless and desperate. And those pairs of eyes that revealed despair, Aizen Sasuke saw everything, and a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. That's right. Despair, waiting for deeper despair in the abyss of despair, watching the distance between the two sides that could not be crossed at all, until the arrival of Mikoutao-kun. P.S. I was stuck, and I was satisfied after several revisions, so the next update will be a little later. Chapter 673. Bankai Zanka no Tachi. It seems that resistance is meaningless. Just when the morale of the Shinigami has almost reached the bottom, and even Shinigami like Onida Kichiyo have begun to look around, preparing to escape in the most appropriate and unnoticed posture. The extreme heat suddenly spread in the center of Karakura town. Bankai Zandachi, an ancient and majestic voice, reached the ears of all the Shinigami, and a glimmer of hope appeared in the eyes of countless desperate Shinigami again. The 1,000-year-old Shinigami who holds the title of the strongest, the captain of the 13th Gotti Division, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, is still here, and we have not failed. However, seeing the changes in the eyes of those Shinigami, Aizen Sasuke's smile grew faintly. Why did he kill Wonder Ways, who was originally used to seal Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's zanpakutō? Because this is all for Mikoutao's plan. Perhaps, Wonder Wise is definitely the best way to get rid of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, the pillar of the Gotti 13th Division. Without the blessing of zanpakutō, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni may still be far stronger than ordinary captains, but the difficulty of solving it is undoubtedly dropped by several orders of magnitude. However, in front of this power guided by Mikoutao, Aizen Sasuke no longer needs Wonder Wise. In other words, in order to allow Makao to control the entire Seireitei more conveniently in the future, it is necessary to shatter the majesty accumulated by Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni for 1,000 years in the most intuitive way. Moreover, from despair to seeing hope, we can fall into deeper despair, right? Aizen Sasuke, who is good at playing with people's hearts, ignored Kurosaki Ichigo and slowly turned around to look at Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni. At this moment, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's appearance has changed greatly. His beard, which he had always carefully protected, was burnt everywhere, and his Shinigami uniform was intact revealing his sturdy and oppressive upper body. The Raijin Jaka, which was burning with scorching flames in the Shikai state, was no longer a flame, and its appearance became a black charcoal sword that only emitted a wisp of smoke from time to time. Is this Captain General Yamamoto's Bankai? This is the first time I've seen it with my own eyes. Aizen Sasuke's tone was still so arrogant, as if he was standing at a higher angle to make a simple comment on this so-called oldest and strongest zanpakutō. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's slender eyes exuded a majesty and coldness that made people dare not look directly at him, and he spoke word by word. Aizen, you'll die under this sword. No. Almost at the moment when Aizen Sasuke finished speaking, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, who was walking slowly step by step, suddenly accelerated and appeared in front of Aizen Sasuke in an instant. Zanpachi. East rising sun blade facing this slash, Aizen Sasuke did not retreat. With the idea of defeating Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni in an absolute way, he simply raised his palm and pressed against the Zanpachi. In an instant, between the huge amount of spiritual pressure arranged and condensed in a special structure, a spiritual pressure shield that was almost enough to make ordinary captain-level Shinigami despair appeared, and spoke. Captain, what a pity. The battle of the Shinigami is a battle of spiritual pressure. This spiritual pressure that exceeds the limit of the Shinigami is destined not to be, however, before Aizen Sasuke could finish his words, the Zanpachi that slashed on the spiritual pressure shield was like a hot knife cutting into butter. It almost instantly cut the spiritual pressure shield and pointed directly at Aizen Sasuke's chest. Aizen Sasuke's eyes condensed slightly, and his figure retreated violently. However, even with Aizen Sasuke's fast speed, the Zanpachi still touched the special feather fabric made of spiritual pressure on his body. That special feather fabric was cut open instantly. This scene made Aizen Sasuke's expression condense. As a product of spiritual pressure that exceeds the limit of the Shinigami, the strength of this special feather fabric is almost the same as the strength of Aizen Sasuke's current spirit body. In other words, if the Zanpachi can cut this special feather fabric, it can also cut Aizen Sasuke's spirit body in a real sense. How could it be? Aizen Sasuke was shocked. This scene undoubtedly contradicted the ideas that Aizen Sasuke had held in the past. Obviously, the spiritual pressure of both parties was not at the same level. Why would it be? The next moment, after Aizen Sasuke completely distanced himself from Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, he looked at Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni with a trace of fear in his eyes. Aizen, your expression seems to reveal surprise. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni slowly raised his eyes and spoke. It's just beyond the limit of the god of death. Do you really think that I have never seen it? Oh? Aizen Sasuke. It's just that when the temperature of the zanpakutō in my hand is equivalent to the core of the sun, which is more than 15 million degrees, there is nothing in the world that I can't kill, and you, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni pointed the zanpakutō at Aizen Sasuke, exuding a rare fierce and violent fighting spirit, and shouted. It will never be an exception. Aizen Sasuke said with a smile on his face. Oh, what an exaggeration, Captain Yamamoto. But it's okay. If the end of the strongest god of death is so monotonous and lonely, no one will believe it in Soul Society or in the future. After a pause, Aizen Sasuke slowly pulled out the Kagami Suigetsu from his waist and said. In this case, let me personally defeat the strongest pride of Soul Society and destroy the blazing sun that has been hanging high above the Seireitei for 1,000 years. Arrogant kid. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni shouted, and his figure shot up towards Aizen Sasuke again. Everything he passed by was affected by the temperature of the zanpakutō in his hand and turned into lava. Aizen Sasuke's white Aori fluttered and moved, holding Kagami Suigetsu and actively approaching Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni. Boom. The next moment, zanpakutō and Hyuga Suigetsu collided head-on. The extremely hot air waves exploded instantly, sweeping wildly in all directions. Almost everywhere in the entire Karakura town began to spontaneously combust, and even the sea surface near Karakura town began to visibly show evaporation air waves. What surprised Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni was that Kyokushujetsu, as a zanpakutō, could actually withstand a temperature equivalent to the core of the sun and did not melt and disintegrate instantly. And in that brief moment when Zanpakudachi and Kyokushujetsu were in a stalemate, Aizen Sasuke casually raised the index finger of his left hand and pointed it at Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni. Habm no 90. Black Coffin PS. I am crying and begging for monthly tickets. Chapter 674. The End of Heaven and Earth. Boom. Although the Black Coffin had abandoned the chanting, it was like a black building several dozen stories high the moment it was formed, trapping the tiny figure of Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni inside. Captain Yamamoto, have you not realized yet? Your fragile and aging spirit body, as a god of death, is full of flaws. With the faint sigh of Aizen Sasuke, the inside of the Black Coffin suddenly vibrated violently. The gods of death who were watching around couldn't help but feel a pang in their hearts. The 99th Black Coffin of the Broken Path is not the way of binding. The most terrifying thing about this is that after sealing the enemy inside, countless shadow blades will be launched inside the Black Coffin to attack. There is no way to avoid it, no way to hide, and even resistance cannot withstand the countless shadow blades that burst out at the same time. However, with the power of the Black Coffin completely erupting, it slowly dissipated. The figure of Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni still stood there, his body covered with blazing flames, like a sun that never sets. Zanpakutō was Zanhe prison clothes. Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni narrowed his slender eyes, stared at Aizen Sasuke with a look full of oppression, and said, Aizen, is this the only trick you have? The so-called shadow blade can never touch the flames of this old man that burn everything. For a moment, the air became more and more hot and unbearable. The ground with Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni as the center began to turn into magma in large quantities, almost visible to the naked eye. The constantly rolling magma made Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni look majestic and unfallen. The death gods who were watching from afar felt the extremely hot air in the air, and just breathing was as unbearable as being in a furnace. At this moment, they finally understood why Captain General Yamamoto had never released his Bankai in the Seireitei. No matter how critical the situation was in the past, the changes caused by the release of this kind of Bankai were enough to destroy the world and bring irreversible and significant negative impacts to the Seireitei. Karakura town is burning. Under the influence of the amazing aftermath of the battle between Aizen Sasuke and Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, the rest of the battle in Karakura town had to be suspended. Compared with the tragic casualties of the Gotti 13, the losses of the Seireitei were even more severe. Except for Stark, Lolanet, Byakugan, Ulquiorra and Yami, all the other Seireitei who followed Aizen to the real world died. At this moment, everyone was watching the battle between Aizen Sasuke and Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, a battle that would truly completely change the direction of the entire war. Compared with Aizen Sasuke, whose expression was still so arrogant and indifferent, Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, who knew that his aging spirit could not maintain the Zanka no Katana for a long time, once again took the initiative to pounce on Aizen Sasuke with his body like the scorching sun. Boom. Zanka no Katana once again collided with Kage Mikazuki. The Zanka no Katana that burned everything stopped before Kage Mikazuki that merged with the collapsing jade. Compared with Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni's might that seemed to burn everything, Aizen Sasuke's counterattack was still so easy. Block with Kendo, pull with instant steps, counterattack with ghost ways, and contain with white fighting. Zanpakutō was displayed vividly by Aizen Sasuke, like art. After several rounds of confrontation, Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni looked at Aizen Sasuke with a look, and couldn't help but be deeply shocked. Apart from his spiritual pressure and zanpakutō abilities, Aizen Sasuke's comprehensive mastery of Zanpakutō is unprecedented in the Seireitei. Every aspect is impeccable and perfect. Genius. A truly flawless genius. However, this also made Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni look at Aizen Sasuke with even more murderous intent. Boom. At the moment when Aizen Sasuke once again blocked the slash, Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni chose to retreat this time, and the blade of the Zanpakutō in his hand was inserted into the ground. Zanpakutō South Fire 10 trillion Death Great Funeral Formation. In an instant, the lava produced by the Zanpakutō suddenly surged up, and charred skulls kept coming out of it. Aizen Sasuke turned his calm eyes left and right, looking at the skulls emitting different spiritual pressures, and said, Captain Yamamoto, are you also going to use this boring little trick? Boring. Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni responded with a majestic voice. This is a heavy force that is completely different from the illusion created by a mirror flower and water moon. Every skeleton is an enemy buried under my sword. As the losers, their will and strength will continue to be sealed in my sword, and then they will endlessly kill the targets that I regard as enemies. Almost as Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's voice fell, more than 10 skeletons closest to Aizen Sasuke launched an attack on Aizen Sasuke at the same time. Flying kick. Flash step. Ring turn. Although they were all skeletons, they used extremely high-level movement skills of different races and instantly approached Aizen Sasuke. Aizen Sasuke's eyes condensed, and an unimaginable terrifying spiritual pressure burst out towards the surroundings. However, those skeletons that were not living creatures, as if they were made of ashes, ignored Aizen Sasuke's spiritual pressure and climbed and grabbed Aizen Sasuke one after another. Get out of here. Aizen Sasuke, who seemed to realize that something was wrong, used the mirror flower and water moon in his hand with a little panic to cut at the skeletons that grabbed him. Several skeletons shattered in response. However, at the same time, more skeletons climbed and grabbed Aizen Sasuke's body, restricting Aizen Sasuke's movement. For a moment, Aizen Sasuke seemed to be in a pile of skeletons that was difficult to get out of, and on Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's face, a trace of joy appeared. Caught. Aizen Sasuke's body. Aizen Sasuke's spiritual pressure that transcends the limits of the god of death is undoubtedly an extremely difficult problem, but what makes Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni always cautious is undoubtedly the ability of Mirror Flower and Water Moon. So far, after Aizen Sasuke was truly captured through the Zanpaku South Fire 10 trillion Death Great Funeral Formation, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni truly confirmed that his judgment of Aizen Sasuke's true form was correct. However, even so, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni still did not forget to glance in the direction of Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai, and further confirmed his judgment through the changes in their expressions. It's over, Aizen Sasuke. At this point, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni no longer hesitated. Zanpaku North Heaven and Earth are ashes. Chapter 675 Reality and Illusion. This sword swung from a great distance from Aizen Sasuke. It was like a helium flash from the sun. The unimaginable extreme heat turned into a slash towards Aizen Sasuke's figure submerged in the pile of skulls. Wherever it passed, just as its name suggests, the sky and the earth turned to ashes. Everything was vaporized and annihilated. The earth, the skulls, and Aizen Sasuke. In an instant, all the beings who witnessed this blow were shocked and speechless, and Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni lowered his eyes slightly, just about to take a long, heavy breath. This blow was still an extremely heavy burden even for Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. Suddenly, I don't know if it was because of aging, this breath, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni felt an unexpected pain. No. When Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni reacted. Puff. A clear sound of a sharp blade piercing through the body reached Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's ears, and he could clearly see the mirror flower water moon blade that pierced through his bag from the corner of his eye. How could it be? Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's majestic and calm expression revealed deep shock and disbelief. What a ridiculous reaction! Aizen Sasuke's voice was still so arrogant and indifferent, and he replied. When did Captain Yamamoto have the illusion that I didn't use Mirror Flower Water Moon ? Obviously those skeletons have captured your body, and Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's voice suddenly paused, and he subconsciously looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai, only to see that they were just like the other Shinigami, still unaware of their own situation. When exactly did Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai also fall for your Mirror Flower Water Moon? Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni asked. Captain General Yamamoto, don't you think that I need others to witness the liberation process now before I fall into the Mirror Flower Water Moon? Aizen Sasuke's calm tone made Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's heart sink completely. Along with it, he felt heavy with the spirit that seemed to be omnipotent in the past and the long breath. The pain began to spread violently from Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's body. The next moment, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's eyes, which seemed to have drooped helplessly, suddenly condensed, and he suddenly reached out to grab the Zanpaku blade that pierced his chest, and shouted. Little devil, don't be so proud in front of me, fall into hell with me. Suddenly, the flames covering Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's body burned and rose wildly at an unprecedented degree. It's just, Captain Yamamoto, are you so sure that it's me you caught? Aizen Sasuke's voice suddenly sounded in front of Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was in a trance, and his hands were empty again, only the wound pierced through his chest was abnormally real. At this moment, even though Aizen Sasuke was right in front of him, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni suddenly had the illusion that what he saw was just the flower in the mirror and the moon in the water that he could never catch. And in the real world, the ashes of heaven and earth were cut. When everyone came to their senses, it was not Aizen Sasuke who was wiped out, but Aizen Sasuke stood behind Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, and the flower in the mirror and the moon in the water in his hand pierced Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni. This scene made all the death gods feel cold. The winner has been decided. Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni stood there in a daze. The remaining sun prison rope slowly dissipated. Only the remaining fire sword was still emitting a few wisps of light smoke from time to time. Aizen Sasuke pulled out the mirror flower and walked a moon from Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's chest little by little in front of many dead gods. This scene, in the eyes of many dead gods, is like the sky falling. The sun that has not fallen for 1,000 years has finally come to the time of its fall. Aizen Sasuke's arrogant figure standing on the lava made the death gods really feel an unconcealable fear. How can such a person be defeated? In the Kainyaku Palace, Senju Cheng-ge, who watched the whole process with Unohana Retsu, could not help but admire Aizen Sasuke's means and courage. In order to completely crush the fighting spirit of the Gotti 13th Division, and to completely shatter the unparalleled majesty of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, Aizen Sasuke has been guiding Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni to show his strongest power, and then at the moment when the Shinigami have the strongest hope in their hearts, he instantly brings them to the abyss of despair. At this moment, facing the defeat of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, the instincts of the other Shinigami are not even anger, but fear and despair. As expected of you, Aizen Sasuke, your means of playing with people's hearts are simply unmatched. Senju Cheng-ge sighed, and recognized Aizen Sasuke's overfulfillment of the task. Compared with the original trajectory, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni fell into a trap and was defeated by Wonder Wace's sealed zanpakutō. The ending of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni showing his strength but still being defeated, the pressure on Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni is undoubtedly more devastating. And Unohana Retsu frowned slightly, recalled the battle scene just now with some doubts, and asked. However, how did Aizen Sasuke win? Obviously, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida did not witness Aizen Sasuke releasing Kyokusui, so why did they not react? Makoto Senju thought for a moment and said, the combination of the Hojoku and Kyokusui may have caused a qualitative improvement in Kyokusui ability, allowing Kyokusui to infinitely approach the essence of a certain name, so that Aizen Sasuke can prepare for the next step of controlling the name. Unohana Retsu said. So, what Makoto means is that witnessing the release of Kyokusui was no longer a necessary condition for falling into an illusion. Makoto Senju looked up at the figure of Aizen Sasuke in the picture, shook his head, and said. Perhaps, in addition to the elimination of the prerequisites for falling into the illusion of mirror flower water moon, I'm afraid that the reality that was fixed as blade in the past can also be defined by Aizen Sasuke's other realities. As soon as these words came out, Unohana Retsu completely understood how difficult Aizen Sasuke was at the moment. In the past, Aizen Sasuke's reality would solidify into the blade of Mirror Flower Water Moon, and as long as he touched the Mirror Flower Water Moon itself, he would not be affected by the illusion. However, now Aizen Sasuke can define other things as reality, so the difficulty of cracking Mirror Flower Water Moon can be said to have skyrocketed. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.